Chapter 1805. Looking at it, the Bodhi tree had not grown much taller. The 3 blood crystal Bodhi hanging from it had not changed in size either. It was almost the same as the last time he saw it. A trace of disappointment lingered in Su Yu's eyes. It seemed that not all spiritual objects could be cultivated with mutated attributes. With a grasp in the air, the 3 blood crystal Bodhi fell and were stored in a jade vessel by Su Yu. At this moment, a sudden change occurred. The jade vessel that touched the blood crystal Bodhi was dyed blood red. The surface of the blood crystal Bodhi was densely covered with obscure characters. After a cursory look, Su Yu gasped. The words of the heavenly book. He was not unfamiliar with these characters at all. They were definitely the words of the heavenly book that very few people could recognize. How could the words of the heavenly book be condensed on the fruit? Su Yu's eyes flashed with horror and disbelief. After careful consideration for a long time, Su Yu reluctantly accepted this change. The function of the blood crystal Bodhi was to enhance the refinement of the Great Path rules, so it made sense that the words of the heavenly book could be derived. When Su Yu looked at it, he felt a wave of scorching heat, which made his eyes burn with fire. Shocked, he immediately closed his eyes and stopped looking at it. Only then did the flame that had been created out of nothing extinguish. This is the power of the words of the heavenly book. He was secretly surprised. Then, a deep joy appeared on his face. The idea of leaving 3 for further cultivation was correct. After 250 years, the changes of the blood crystal Bodhi were beyond imagination. With this fruit and the path rain, it would be much easier to condense the rules in the inner mansion. With a wave of divine power, the 3 blood crystal Bodhi were wrapped up, and Su Yu turned to look at Xiao Dai. She was lying lazily on a tree, nibbling on the heavenly orchid silver bamboo. When she saw that Su Yu had come, she lifted her eyelids listlessly and muttered, "It's getting worse and worse. You should grow more spiritual fruits. You don't feed me bamboo every day. I'm not a panda." The blue veins on Su Yu's forehead twitched. She was tired of eating his food. "It's good to have food. Stay here obediently." Su Yu snorted and was about to leave the body. Xiao Dai snorted. "Can't you give me some treasures to eat?" There were many magical treasures stored in the 9 jade spiritual pearl by Su Yu, but they were all collected by him on a daily basis, so they were not very useful. After some thought, he said helplessly, "All right, except for the heavenly orchid silver bamboo sword and the golden jade sword. I can eat all the other treasures." "That's more like it." Little Butterfly's spirit doubled, and she jumped down briskly. "Don't overdo it," Su Yu said impatiently, then left the 9 jade spiritual pearl. As soon as he left, Xiao Dai rolled her eyes and started drooling. "Wah, what a silly master, he's so gullible. Those magic treasures are all broken and disgusting, but there's a high-grade one that's much more delicious than those 2 swords." With a whooshing sound, she arrived in front of the wooden shelf where the magic treasures were stored. Xiao Dai didn't even glance at the dazzling array of magic treasures that were piled up on the ground. She stared straight at the gold-plated bow and arrow on the ground. The giant bow was as tall as 2 people. It wasn't custom-made for humans, but for certain creatures with huge bodies. This was one of the 3 treasures Su Yu found in Huan Yu Longjuan's cavern, the Tianyi Bow. The bow was extremely heavy, and Su Yu had to use the law of giant strength to barely lift it off the ground. He could only pull the bowstring 3 inches. He hadn't noticed the uniqueness of the bow at that time, so he had kept it there. Su Yu had almost forgotten about it. "Haha, little baby, I've had my eyes on you for a long time. You must be delicious to eat." Xiao Dai rubbed her hands together, her eyes shining as she stared at the Tianyi Bow, and her saliva was dripping down. She grabbed it with both hands, and even with her great strength, it was extremely strenuous for her to lift it. She had to use all her strength to barely lift it up. "My goodness, good things are extraordinary. You're so heavy, I won't need to eat for a few months after eating you." Xiao Dai stroked the Tianyi Bow as if she was touching a delicious food. "Little baby, I won't stand on ceremony." Wow. She opened her mouth and bit down hard on the Tianyi Bow. But at that moment, an irresistible force appeared in the 9 jade spiritual pearl, forcibly separating her from the Tiani bow. Bang! The Tiani bow fell to the ground with a dull thud. At the same time, the sole figure of a coiled dragon in a royal robe flickered in front of the Tiani bow, staring at Xiao Dai with a faint smile. "You gluttonous cat! I knew you were up to something." How sharp was Suyu? He could count the number of intestines in Xiao Dai's stomach with his eyes closed. He pretended to leave, but in fact, he was observing what Xiao Dai had taken a fancy to in the treasures. To his surprise, it turned out to be this giant bow that had nothing special except for its weight. Why did you come back?" Xiao Dai was startled and immediately felt guilty like a thief who had been caught on the spot. Suyu was amused. "If I had been a little later, wouldn't you have eaten this bow?" Xiao Dai became more and more guilty, so she behaved more stubbornly. Stiffening her neck, she said, "Who said I was thinking about this bow? I just saw that it was taking up space, so I helped you eat it to make room." "Is that so?" Suyu had a playful look on his face. Xiao Dai snorted. "Are you suspecting me?" With an angry look of suspicion on her face, she pounced on the wooden frame and grabbed a treasure with one hand. She opened her mouth and gnawed on it, making crunching noises. As she gnawed, she looked at Suyu with a provocative look. It was as if she was saying, "So what? I'm not eyeing that bow. I eat everything. I'm not picky." Laughing, Suyu wrapped the giant bow and arrows around it and left the 9 jade spiritual pearl. Xiao Dai chewed a few times. Her expression of enjoyment just now was now one of grievance. "Uft, it tastes like wax. It's disgusting. Damn it. I've been fooled by him again." Xiao Dai yelled angrily. If she had not shown such great interest in the Tiani bow, how would Suyu have known that this bow was extraordinary? Returning to his body, Suyu sized up the Tiani bow on the ground. Could I have been too careless during the initial inspection? He thought to himself as he examined it again. The result was the same. Apart from the fact that the material was very special and could not be identified, there was nothing special about it. The arrow had also been inspected from beginning to end, and nothing special had been detected. It would be great if I had a place to test the power of this arrow. Suyu looked around. This was the palace, and it was not a good idea to test the bow before he knew the power of the giant bow. After thinking for a while, Suyu put the bow into the space of the Buddha pearl. There were still a few days before the Dao Rain, so he stopped training. He took out a few books about extraterrestrial civilizations and read them patiently. He calmed himself down and adjusted himself to his best state. At the same time, the people of the imperial clan court had not completely dispersed. The princes were discussing among themselves, still worried about the addition of the 6th prince. They no longer doubted his identity, but his strength was still unknown. Moreover, he was loved by Dongfang Xia, who knew if he would secretly give Suyu some dangerous things. The 1st prince was in the worst mood. With his strength and supporters, he was not worried about the addition of the 6th prince, who did not have much of background. He was in a bad mood because of the north-gazing pearl. Can you explain in detail the Constellation C civilization and how you were captured by it? In front of the artificial mountain, the 1st prince stood with his hands behind his back, coldly staring at the north-gazing pearl. The north-gazing pearl felt bitter in her heart. How could she explain in detail? Once the news of the theft of the North Star tripod got out, it would be a disaster. It was just a misunderstanding. I was captured by accident. There is nothing to say. Her eyes were evasive, and her words were somewhat insincere. The 1st prince tugged hard with his hands behind his back. There was a problem. "Oh, it's fine. I was just asking. You're not feeling well. Go back and rest." The 1st prince smiled lightly. After she left, a dark shadow suddenly appeared beside the 1st prince. It was at the level of a martial emperor. How was the investigation of the north-gazing pearl's illness? The 1st prince's eyes were deep and cold. The dark shadow said in a low voice, just as the 1st prince expected, the north-gazing pearl's illness is serious. Although the North Star Palace hid it well, I still sneaked in and found out about the illness. "What illness?" "It's hysteria," the dark shadow said. The north-gazing pearl will fall into an inextricable fantasy every once in a while. Fantasy about what? The 1st prince frowned. The dark shadow was a little hesitant. Fantasy about having sex with a man. Bang! A fierce aura suddenly erupted from the first prince's body. He clenched his fists behind his back and struck out with a loud bang. The dark shadow was caught off guard and was sent flying. It only stopped after smashing a large piece of the fake mountain. A deep depression could be clearly seen on its chest. It could injure a martial emperor with one move. Which man? The first prince's eyes were red, and he could not suppress the anger in his eyes. As his fiancée, as his future princess, she actually had this kind of filthy disease. He could not accept it. It is said that it is Su Yu, who is now the sixth prince, Dongfang Yu. The dark shadow coughed a few times and said with great respect, "Ah." The first prince roared furiously. He had felt that the north-gazing pearl's words were ambiguous, and that she had an unclear relationship with Su Yu. Now that he knew the truth, he was instantly enraged. Cold, murderous intents were released, and the dark shadow was so shocked that she hurriedly retreated and put some distance between them. Dongfang Yu, the first prince roared. The princes in the distance were all surprised. What had provoked the first prince to act like this? The other princes looked on coldly. The fifth prince, who was on good terms with the first prince, flew over and said, "First brother, what happened to Dongfang Yu?" The question pulled the first prince back from the brink of anger. This was the imperial palace, and Dongfang Yu was the sixth prince who had just received his father's favor. The first prince could not take the initiative to harm him, even if he wanted to cut him into pieces. Regaining his composure, the first prince stared at the fifth prince. He rolled his eyes and said, "Fifth brother, I am doing this for you." Just now, the spies reported that after Dongfang Yu returned to the mansion, he ridiculed us, especially you, who lost your life-saving thumb ring. He even slandered you, saying that you... The fifth prince's expression was gloomy. What did he say about me? He said that you were stupid, ignorant, and arrogant. In the end, you slapped yourself in the face in front of everyone and were hated by father. Crack, damn it. The fifth prince punched the broken fake mountain and said angrily, "He has gone too far. Isn't that right? That is why I feel sorry for you." The first prince clenched his fists. "I will go and settle the score with him now." Wait, now that he has received father's favor, whose side will father take if you go and settle the score with him? This question caused the fifth prince to hesitate endlessly. The answer was obvious. Father would think that the fifth prince was deliberately taking revenge. What should I do? Am I supposed to watch a bastard born outside take a dump on my head? The fifth prince said angrily. The first prince curled his lips and thought to himself, "You are really stupid, taking the bait so easily with just a few words." Haha, isn't it easy to deal with him? The Dao Rain in a few days is a good opportunity. I have a way to make him cry and beg you. The first prince smiled mysteriously. A few days later, the day of the Dao Rain was approaching. These days, Su Yu had been studying the knowledge of extraterrestrial civilizations. Occasionally, Princess Rukin would come over to chat with him and discuss matters related to the Dao Rain. It was also her first time experiencing the Dao Rain, so she did not know much more than Su Yu. However, Su Yu learned from her that every prince had a special treasure bestowed by the royal family, which could help them refine the inner mansion's chain of rules more easily when the Dao Rain came. How infuriating! I asked the Imperial Clan Court for your rain calming needle 3 days ago, but they kept delaying. On this day, Princess Rukin came over again, sweating profusely. She grabbed the teapot on Su Yu's table and drank to her heart's content. Su Yu smiled indifferently. "I'm afraid it's not the Imperial Clan Court that's making things difficult for me, but my brother's intention?" Princess Rukin raised her eyebrows slightly and rolled her eyes. "This won't do. I'll get my aunt to help you get the rain-calming needle." Right now, Emperor Wuhan was unusually busy. As the Empire's most powerful formation emperor, she had been working day and night to strengthen several areas of the Dao Rain several days ago, especially the first-grade areas, which were of utmost importance. She would not allow outsiders to approach them easily. She could not leave at the moment. "Forget it. I'm already very grateful to you for taking the risk to provide me with the first-grade area of the Dao Rain. The rain calming needle is not within the scope of the agreement, so you don't have to worry about it, Suyu said. He had inquired about the effects of the rain calming needle. It was not as powerful as the blood crystal Bodhi, so it would be useless even if he had it. Humph. I'm just not satisfied that my brothers are targeting you in every way. Princess Rukin wrinkled her nose cutely. Suyu smiled. They were humiliated by the Imperial Clan Court's matter, and I'm their competitor. How could they be nice to me? Don't worry. As long as they don't tamper with the Dao Rain, I won't bother with them. She had come to comfort Suyu, but she was the one who was being comforted by him. She felt embarrassed. Fine, it's great that you can accept it. If I become the queen of the DU Empire one day, I'll definitely avenge you and teach them a lesson. Princess Rukin clenched her fists and bared her teeth. Suyu smiled. Just like that, the days approached. 2 days later, Suyu, who was reading a book, suddenly felt something and looked up at the sky outside the window. In the vast blue sky, a strange golden cloud had appeared out of nowhere. Then, more and more clouds gathered from all directions. Half a day later, the entire sky was golden, and the entire imperial city of the Dayu dynasty was illuminated by the golden light. Chapter 1806. The shocking phenomenon startled the entire imperial city. From the common people to the strong men in the imperial city, they all stared at the golden clouds in the sky in shock and ecstasy. Dao Rain. The Dao Rain that had arrived as scheduled. Dong, dong, dong. Deep in the imperial city, a loud bell rang, spreading throughout the entire imperial city. Suyu, who was in the imperial city, heard it even more deafeningly. Princess Rukin pushed open the door, her face full of surprise. Brother, the Dao Rain is coming. Let's hurry to the designated location. Since the first-grade Dao Rain area is reserved for the imperial family, why should we be afraid of outsiders occupying it? Princess Rukin said impatiently. Even within the first-grade Dao Rain area, there are good and bad spots. The good spots have 10% more Dao Rain. They should not stay for long. The two quickly left the mansion and arrived at the imperial sacrificial altar that had been prepared. It was the center of the imperial palace, less than a mile in circumference. Normally, it was used for sacrificial ceremonies, but this time, it had become the central area for the Dao Rain. The entire sacrificial altar was surrounded by a powerful formation. Judging from the strength of the formation, even the double-crown emperor could not break through the defense. This was the first-grade Dao Rain area, which only the imperial family was allowed to enter. Outside the sacrificial altar to the imperial city walls, it was the second-grade Dao Rain area. Only the children of the princes and those who had made great contributions could enter. Outside the imperial city walls, it was the third-grade Dao Rain area. Outside the imperial city, it was the fourth grade. There is a world of difference between each grade of Dao Rain area. One could imagine how eye-catching the first-grade Dao Rain area was. Many nobles who had reached the martial emperor level or did not need the Dao Rain came to the sacrificial altar to observe the imperial family members being baptized by the Dao Rain. Among them was the first prince, whose cultivation had long reached the martial emperor level. Beside him stood the fifth prince. The two of them were full of confidence, their eyes scanning the crowd as if they were looking for something. Suddenly, the fifth prince's eyes turned cold, locking onto Princess Rukin and Suyu, who had just arrived. They're here. I'll go over first, the fifth prince said. The first prince nodded. It's up to you. Don't worry, first brother. I'll make sixth brother beg me to come to you. Suyu and Princess Rukin rushed to the sacrificial altar and heaved a sigh of relief. Although most of the members of the royal family were present, the restriction on the altar had not been activated yet, so there was no need to worry that the good spots had already been occupied. Looking at the altar, which was less than half a kilometer in size, there were only 100 designated spots. With the sacrificial altar as the center, they spread out in a radial pattern, divided into 10 rows. Later, I'll try my best to get a spot in the first few rows. The Dao Rain, there is denser. Princess Ruchun was somewhat excited. The Dao Rain that came once every 30,000 years was such a great opportunity that he had to grasp it well. As long as one could condense the laws in the inner palace, the biggest obstacle to becoming a martial emperor would be swept away. Glancing at the other members of the royal family, they were also looking at the first few rows with burning eyes. It seemed that those seats were going to be fought for. "Sixth Prince, you've come quite early." An unkind, teasing voice drifted over. Suyu glanced sideways at her, then looked away as if nothing had happened. "Hee, you just become a prince, and you're already so arrogant. No wonder you look down on us." The fifth prince walked over and sneered with his arms crossed. Suyu still turned a deaf ear to him and pretended that this person did not exist. "Are you deaf? Didn't you hear what I said?" After being ignored repeatedly, the fifth prince was a little angry. Because of his arrival, he had been secretly watched by countless people, all of them looking like they were waiting for a good show. Everyone knew that the fifth prince had been reprimanded and warned by the monarch because of the sixth prince's matter. He had lost a great deal of face. Seeing that he had taken the initiative to pick a fight with him, everyone felt that there was going to be a good show to watch. Only then did Suyu slightly crease his brows, glancing at the fifth prince. "Am I very close to you? Why should I answer your question?" The fifth prince sneered. "You're indeed arrogant. I wonder if you have the guts to make a bet with me." Unexpectedly, before he could finish his sentence, Suyu interrupted him. "I'm not interested in making a bet with you. No matter what you bet, you're just short of carving on your face the words, 'I have a conspiracy, and I'm going to set you up.' Please, if you want to set me up, at least control your expression. At the very least, you should put on a show. Your attitude is not professional enough. Forgive me for not being able to entertain you." Suyu's incisive sarcasm caused the onlookers to burst into laughter. The first prince, who was watching from afar, could not help but shake his head. What an idiot. The fifth prince's face was flushed, his face full of anger and humiliation. He could not wait to strike and smash Suyu's detestable face into pieces. "Sixth Prince, are you a man or not?" The fifth prince shouted. He wanted to provoke Suyu, but in the eyes of the onlookers, he seemed rather childish. Do I need you to question whether I'm a man or not?" Suyu retorted unceremoniously. The fifth prince said, "Are you going to bet or not?" Suyu mocked. "Are you asking if I'm willing to be set up by you or not? Don't you think this question is rather idiotic?" The onlookers secretly shook their heads. Perhaps the fifth prince was more experienced, but in terms of eloquence, he was ultimately a flower cultivated in a greenhouse. He was still too inexperienced compared to Suyu. The fifth prince was furious. Everything was different from what he had imagined. According to his plan, he had first provoked Suyu, angered him, and then proceeded to place a bet. In the end, Suyu was unusually experienced, easily forcing him to the brink of fury. The fifth prince was furious, but he could not do anything. He stood rooted to the ground, not knowing what to say next. At this moment, Suyu sighed with pity and sympathy. "Sigh. All right, I'll reluctantly fall for your trap and make a bet with you. Tell me, what are we betting?" In the end, Suyu still accepted the bet. However, the fifth prince felt as if he had eaten a bowl of live flies. He was not secretly pleased that his plan had succeeded. Instead, he felt extremely uncomfortable, especially the mocking gazes of the onlookers. It was as if the one who had been tricked was not Suyu, but the idiot himself. Who was the one tricking whom? At this moment, the fifth prince had a very bad feeling. However, he was already riding a tiger and could not back down. He braced himself and said, "Let's bet on whose internal rules are more complete. What are the stakes?" "The stakes are 100,000 divine stones. If it's not enough, write an IOU." The fifth prince finally found some confidence. He had accumulated 100,000 divine stones over the years. However, Suyu obviously did not have that much. If he lost and could not pay up, the fifth prince would become his creditor. At that time, he could do whatever he wanted to the sixth prince, forcing him to kneel and beg for mercy. 100,000 divine stones? That was indeed a considerable sum of divine stones. The 10,000 treasure haul had only accumulated 30,000 divine stones over the years. It was extremely difficult for an ordinary person to obtain 30,000 divine stones. 100,000 divine stones was even more impossible. He immediately guessed the other party's plan. "Do you dare to bet?" Our cultivation levels are the same. Logically, there should not be much difference, the fifth prince said. Princess Rookin, who was listening by the side, could not help but be annoyed. Fifth brother, you are quite good at selectively ignoring things. What do you mean by there is no difference? First, sixth brother did not obtain the rain stabilizing needle. Second, he did not have the time to be rewarded by father with the blood crystal Bodhi. How could he compare to you? Sixth brother was destined to lose from the start. How dare you speak? Many onlookers were secretly surprised, but they were not the least bit surprised. The rain-stabilizing needle was distributed by the imperial clan court. The fifth prince and the other princes had a much deeper relationship with the imperial clan court than the newly promoted sixth prince. It was not difficult to make things difficult for Su Yu so that he could not obtain the rain-stabilizing needle. Furthermore, the blood crystal Bodhi was in the hands of Dongfang Xia. He could not reward it to Su Yu in time. In this way, Su Yu was 2 steps behind. How could he compare to the fifth prince? Su Yu was destined to lose even before the duel had begun. The fifth prince grunted. Condensing the rules mainly depends on one's own body. These external objects do not have much effect. Princess Rookin laughed. Is that so? How about I ask the fifth prince to hand over these 2 objects? The fifth prince said forcefully. What's the point of saying so much nonsense? If the sixth prince really has the guts, then compete with me. The crowd, seeing this, could not help but curse. He was the epitome of shamelessness. If Su Yu did not have any problems with his intelligence, he would definitely not accept the bet. All right, I'll bet. No one had expected Su Yu to agree so easily. The onlookers were dumbfounded, unable to believe their ears. He had actually agreed. Wasn't this a clear loss? That was 100,000 divine stones. How is he going to pay them back? All right, the bet is set. You cannot go back on your word. The fifth prince said immediately, afraid that Su Yu would go back on his word. His heart was bursting with joy. In fact, even he had felt that the odds of the bet being set were slim. Who knew Su Yu would agree? Shouldn't we invite an appraiser to set up a contract? Su Yu asked. The fifth prince nodded. All right, I think the first prince is not bad. As our elder brother, you are the most qualified. The crowd looked toward him. The first prince nodded with a smile. He was very willing to be the appraiser. Since fifth brother and sixth brother don't mind, I'll reluctantly be a witness for you this time. I'm sorry, but I despise it. Su Yu's words shocked the first prince to death, and he bluntly made the first prince lose face. The first prince's footsteps stiffened slightly, and his eyes were filled with anger. The fifth prince creased his brows. Who do you want to invite? He could invite anyone but the first prince. Anyone could see that the fifth prince and the first prince were in the same boat. If he were to be the appraiser, there would be a lot of trouble afterward. Let Eunuch Chow do it. Him? The fifth prince creased his brows, but did not object. If it's Eunuch Chow, that's fine. I just don't know what Eunuch Chow thinks. Eunuch Chow, who was watching from afar, had a smile on his face. He was naturally willing to be the appraiser and show his superior status. I am indebted to the 2 princes for your kindness. I am willing to be the appraiser, Eunuch Chow said. That was it. The bet of 100,000 divine stones attracted even more onlookers. Chapter 1807. 1-1 on the fifth prince. 1-5 on the sixth prince. If you're interested, why don't we play another round? Hearing this, the crowd immediately gathered around, excited. It was obvious that the fifth prince could win even if he were to lie down. He could definitely win back 10% of the bet. 100 divine stones on the fifth prince winning. 300 divine stones on the fifth prince winning. Hee. Earning 30 divine stones as pocket money is not bad. I'll bet 300 as well. The bet had been on the fifth prince the entire time. As for the sixth prince, no one dared to bet on him. Everyone could see that Su Yu was bound to lose. The first prince sneered. He, too, thought Su Yu was bound to lose. By placing a bet despite knowing he would lose money, he was trying to undermine Su Yu's confidence. It was worth it to lose a few hundred divine stones to attack Su Yu. Seeing that the bets were about to end, Su Yu, who was the center of attention, suddenly walked over and chuckled. Is there a limit to the bet? The first prince sneered. You can bet however much you have. I can afford it. He did not believe that Su Yu, who had just become the sixth prince, could have much savings. Suyu shrugged. Not much, just 30,000 divine stones. The altar, which had been bustling with noise, suddenly fell silent for a moment. Then it exploded with cheers. My God, 30,000 divine stones. I didn't know the Sixth Prince was so rich. Where did he get so many divine stones? The first prince's pupil shrank. He had not expected Suyu to have so much money. He could not help but laugh. Why? Are you betting on yourself to lose, Sixth Brother? If that's the case, I'll have to pay you 3,000 divine stones. Haha. First Brother, you think too much. Of course, I'm betting on myself to win. After saying that, he tossed a few bags filled with godstones over. Upon closer inspection, there were indeed 30,000 divine stones. One of the bags was filled with rare, middle-grade divine stones. The first prince was slightly shocked. He then laughed. Sixth Brother, thank you for giving me 30,000 divine stones. I'll accept it without hesitation. Suyu smiled. If I were you, I would start preparing how to repay the 150,000 divine stones. Even for the first prince, 150,000 godstones was a huge sum. It was unknown if he had that much. He will see. The first prince laughed contemptuously. He did not think that the fifth prince would lose to Suyu, who had nothing. At this moment, the golden clouds in the sky suddenly changed. With the center as the focal point, it spun rapidly and a loophole appeared. The gap grew larger and larger until it was the size of an altar. A simple and unadorned ancient sword slowly descended from the whirlpool. Instantly, a vast and majestic spiritual pressure intimidated all living beings present to the point of prostrating on the ground. It felt as if a supreme existence was standing in front of them, and they couldn't help but want to prostrate themselves in worship. However, it was only a sword in front of them. Shwa! Suddenly, a gray-robed elder flew out from the depths of the imperial palace. His beard was extremely long, even longer than his body, and it danced wildly in the wind. He raised his head to look at the ancient sword, his eyes filled with reverence. The ecliptic palace's ancient sword. Then he raised his voice and shouted, Everyone, enter the range of the Tao Rain immediately. The Tao Rain is coming. Swoosh! He had just finished speaking when someone beside Suyu dashed out, heading straight for the altar that had just been opened. Suyu was not to be outdone. He grabbed Princess Rukin and used the yin-yang wings of Supreme Pole to teleport away. When he reappeared, he appeared in front of the first row. Princess Rukin was pleasantly surprised. She had been worried that she would not be able to get a seat in the first few rows, but Suyu brought her to the best seat. Without another word, Princess Rukin immediately sat down and occupied the seat. Suyu also sat down with his legs crossed. When the rest of the people rushed over, Suyu and Princess Rukin had already occupied the best seats in the first row. This speed made the people who came later anxious and angry, and they quickly occupied the seats in front. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In the blink of an eye, the first row of seats was completely occupied. Strangely, Suyu recognized most of them. The second prince, the third prince, the fourth prince, and the fifth prince. The fifth prince was not far from Suyu, sneering coldly. You're quite fast at snatching seats, but this is only the beginning. Don't be worse than the last row and waste the first row's seats. Suyu turned a deaf ear to him. As they waited, the seats at the back were occupied by people one after another. Soon, the seats were filled with people from the royal family. The seats of the Tao Rain in the other areas were also occupied. The living creatures within the range of the Tao Rain raised their heads and waited for the most exciting moment. At that moment, the gray-robed elder with a long beard said, The Tao Rain will only last for 10 minutes. Whether or not you can seize the opportunity of your life depends on yourselves. Looking at him, the magnificent aura of the Double Crown Emperor was enough for people to guess his identity. He was one of the 3 Double Crown Emperors of the Empire, the gray-robed Emperor. Not long after he spoke, the ancient sword from the ecliptic palace emitted an intimidating sharp light. The body of the sword suddenly turned, causing the golden clouds in all directions to gather into a ball. The glittering golden clouds appeared to be a dark gold color because they were too concentrated. Drip! all of a sudden, a dark golden raindrop fell from the golden clouds. This drop triggered a chain reaction, and countless dark golden raindrops poured down in torrents. Everyone present immediately began to prepare, taking out the rain-fixing needles. The fifth prince tossed one of the rain-fixing needles above his head with one hand. Suddenly, the force of the dark golden raindrops falling near him was greatly reduced. Taking advantage of this opportunity, a vortex formed by the condensation of divine energy appeared on the top of the fifth prince's head. A few dark golden raindrops fell into the vortex and were wrapped by the divine energy as they returned to the inner mansion. Immediately after, the fifth prince methodically wrapped the second drop. On the other hand, Su Yu, who did not have the rain-fixing needles, had the dark golden raindrops falling quickly. He only had time to wrap the first dark golden raindrop. The second dark golden raindrop was wasted and fell to the ground. It quickly merged into the ground and could no longer be absorbed. This was the magical use of the rain-fixing needles. It ensured that the Tao rain that fell nearby would not be wasted. The first prince, who was watching from the sidelines, sneered. "I really don't understand where you get the confidence to bet 30,000 divine stones." Time passed quickly. Everyone was absorbing the Tao rain in an orderly manner. Suyu was neither servile nor overbearing. He did not panic. Even though there were many losses, he did not waste the Tao rain that he should have captured. He maintained a good attitude. 10 minutes passed slowly. As the golden clouds became thinner, the Tao rain also became sparser. Before long, the Tao rain had become very sparse. After 10 minutes, just as the gray-robed divine emperor had said, the Tao rain stopped. The mysterious aura of the Tao rain still lingered in the air. However, the ground was completely dry. There were no traces of the Tao rain being wet. The ancient sword, which was hovering high up in the sky, turned into a beam of light and disappeared into the Dayu Empire. The Tao rain was over. Princess Ru Chun let out a long breath. Her eyes were filled with surprise. When she noticed Su Yu, she asked worriedly, "How many drops of rain did you absorb?" "Exactly 100 drops. Princess Ru Chun creased her brows. She looked at the fifth prince and said, "Don't worry. I will help you repay a portion of the wager after this. I will not let the fifth prince make things difficult for you." At that moment, the fifth prince looked over and laughed mockingly. "Sixth brother, you have to be mentally prepared. I have absorbed 130 drops of Tao rain. The rules that I have refined will definitely be more complete than yours. Let's wait until everything is over." So you did not think much of it. The first prince, who was looking on coldly from the outside, sneered, as if victory was already in his grasp. "Haha, stubborn. Let's see how you repay the 100,000 divine stones." The fifth prince laughed. "Haha, it is good that you have such confidence. I was worried that you would do something stupid because you are a sore loser." At that moment, the gray-robed divine emperor spoke again. "Digest the Tao rain that you have absorbed immediately and start refining the rules." The rest of the people took out the blood crystal bodhi that they had prepared. The fifth prince also took out one. However, unlike the other's blood crystal bodhi, his blood crystal bodhi was pure, and there were fewer impurities within it. Seeing that, Princess Ru Chun was slightly shocked. Could this be cultivated by father using his own divine blood? They were all members of the royal family, but the purity of the blood crystal clan's bloodline was different. As the king of the royal family, Dongfang Xia's bloodline was the purest. A blood crystal bodhi cultivated by his bloodline was naturally much stronger than an ordinary blood crystal bodhi. Haha, as luck would have it, I happen to have one. Princess Ru Chun frowned deeply. "I remember that father only cultivated 3 blood crystal bodhi. 2 of them were used many years ago, and the remaining one was given to eldest brother. Why is it in your hands?" Then, he came to a sudden realization. He said coldly, "You have really schemed and made thorough preparations. One did not have a blood crystal bodhi, while the other had an exceptionally pure blood crystal bodhi. Moreover, the latter had obtained dozens more drops of Tao rain than the former. Was there need to ask such a question?" The fifth prince's gaze shifted. He was about to sneer when his expression froze. He saw Suyu opening his mouth and swallowing a blood crystal bodhi. Suyu swallowed it very quickly. Hence, the fifth prince did not have time to see the blood crystal bodhi clearly. He was shocked. What? You have a blood crystal bodhi? Where did you get it from? Suyu looked at him and calmly said, Is there a need for me to answer you? The fifth prince was bewildered. The fact that Suyu had a blood crystal bodhi was completely unexpected. After pondering for a moment, he slowly relaxed. So what if Suyu had a blood crystal bodhi? Could it be purer than his blood crystal bodhi? Did he have more Dao Rain? This was destined to be an obvious match. Haha, then let's watch the show. After saying this, he swallowed the blood crystal bodhi and started to cultivate his law. Suyu focused his mind and looked at the situation in his inner mansion. In his inner mansion, which had been filled with divine energy in the past, there were 100 drops of dark golden water droplets lined up side by side. Every drop of water was filled with an unparalleled, mysterious intent. Chapter 1808. Are these all the chains of rules? Suyu was secretly surprised. But why are they golden? Of all the laws he had seen, apart from the original mother of laws, all the other laws were pitch black in color. Could it be that the Yellow Palace Hall has specially processed them? Suyu thought. Ordinary chains of rules did not have the conditions to be comprehended at all. Only these processed ones could be provided for the Overlord to comprehend. Suyu's soul touched the first drop of Dao Rain. Suddenly, his soul seemed to explode, and countless strange and cold information surged in like a great river and sea. In the vast information, Suyu saw the ebb and flow of the tide, the withering of plants, death and life, and the boundless great nothingness world. A small drop of Dao Rain was all-encompassing. His soul was lost in it and did not know which thing to look at. At this time, a drop of red air full of power flowed in. It was the power of the blood crystal bodhi. The red air surrounded Suyu's soul, making his consciousness gradually clear. His perspective of looking at everything became more transcendental and thorough. The seemingly simple, natural scenery, with the help of the red air, revealed the hidden rules. Suyu's heart skipped a beat. Rules were everywhere in the world. However, which law was most suitable for him? Suyu thought about the several powers from the divine nine-dragon cauldron. Time, space, soul, life, death, fate. These 6 powers were the foundation of Suyu's martial path, and they were the special powers that he relied on the most. If he wanted to condense the rules, he would naturally focus on them. With a thought, the scenery around him changed, and a long river of time and space appeared. Chains of the time rules flew in the long river. This was the time rules. Suyu's heart skipped a beat. Staring at the chains, he gradually understood. The so-called time can also be like this. At this moment, he entered an unprecedented state of comprehension. Before, he was ignorant about the concept of time, but now he had a new understanding. It was as if the golden raindrop had opened a new door for him. But soon, the whole scene was suddenly annihilated. Apparently, the chain rules and the golden raindrop had been absorbed by Suyu and collapsed on its own. He calmed down and began to comprehend the second drop of golden raindrop in an orderly manner. Time passed slowly. One day later, in the last row, an elderly man sighed and stood up. The chains of laws contained within the Dao Rain are too profound. I'm afraid that someone with a dull aptitude like me will not be able to comprehend them. In the process of receiving the Dao Rain, he received as many as 120 drops of Dao Rain. But so what if I get it? Not being able to comprehend the profound laws of the Dao Rain was also disappointing. 2 days later, 20 people had already given up. Without exception, none of them were able to condense the chains of laws. Even with the help of the Dao Rain, if he still couldn't comprehend the laws, then he would have no hope of becoming a divine emperor of heaven and earth. 3 days later, another 10 people gave up. Only one of them managed to refine a weak chain of laws, but because his comprehension was not deep enough, the Dao Rain was wasted, and he could only withdraw regretfully. The 4th day, another 10 people gave up. Compared to before, some of them had condensed relatively good chains of laws, but they were still extremely weak, and their chances of becoming emperors were slim. There were only 60 people left. Most of them were young, and the oldest was no more than 1,000 years old, which meant that they were very talented. On the 5th day, 10 people gave up, and one of them managed to condense half of the chains of laws. Although the laws were relatively simple compared to the other laws, it was not easy. If they worked hard in the future, there was a chance that they could become the divine emperor of heaven and earth. On the 6th day, 10 people left, but 2 of them succeeded in condensing more than half of the chains of laws. On the 7th day, 10 people left, and 3 of them managed to condense half of the chains of laws. On the 8th day, 10 people left. Surprisingly, 5 of them managed to condense half of the chains of laws. On the 9th day, there were only 10 people left. 6 princes, 1 princess, and 3 talented members of the previous generation of the royal family. They had persisted until now, which was enough to prove that they were talented. But the most eye-catching one was obviously Su Yu, the 6th prince, who was not favored by many. Strange, without the rain stabilizing needle, the 6th prince's Tao rain is far superior to the others. How could he comprehend it until now? Is it because he comprehended every drop of Tao rain more deeply than others? That's impossible. Even the most profound Tao rain couldn't have lasted until now. Could it be that his comprehension of the Tao rain has surpassed that of the 5th prince, who swallowed the pure blood crystal Bodhi? Amidst the discussion, the 1st prince looked somewhat puzzled. Su Yu had persisted for a much longer time than he had imagined. On the 10th day, the 3 talented members of the royal family left one after another. Fortunately, the 3 of them had condensed the chains of laws to 60%. With a little more effort, they had a good chance of becoming divine warriors of heaven and earth. The remaining people were the 6 princes and 1 princess. On the 11th day, the 4th prince was the first to open his eyes, and he left the altar with a satisfied look. He did not specify the degree of condensation, but judging by his expression, it should be extraordinary. On the 12th day, the 3rd prince left the altar. His calm face couldn't help but be filled with surprise. On the 13th day, the 2nd prince and Princess Rukin left at the same time. The former was fine, but the latter was overjoyed. It seemed that he had gained a lot. The only people left on the altar were the 5th prince and Su Yu. The former was not surprising, but the latter was shocking. Oh my God! Could he have fallen asleep? Judging by the amount of Tao rain he absorbed, it should have dried up long ago. I'm guessing that he is afraid that he will be embarrassed if he loses, so he is pretending to be comprehending and holding on. Great minds think alike. On the 14th day, the 5th prince suddenly opened his eyes and laughed loudly. His laughter was loud and clear, piercing through the clouds. He had also finished comprehending. His face was brimming with joy. It was obvious that he had gained a shocking harvest. Suddenly, he realized that Su Yu was still comprehending. He could not help but be shocked, and he cried out involuntarily, "Why is he still here?" He had an extremely bad premonition. The 1st prince stared at Su Yu. His previous confidence was nowhere to be seen, and hints of worry appeared between his brows. Could it be related to the strange blood crystal Bodhi that he had swallowed? He did not miss the fact that Su Yu had also swallowed a blood crystal Bodhi of unknown origin. The 5th prince stared at Su Yu, his expression uncertain. His joy from comprehending had vanished in an instant. Should I? The 5th prince had a stern look in his eyes. If you're to interrupt Su Yu's comprehension, since you have finished comprehending, why are you still inside? Leave quickly. The gray-robed emperor furrowed his brows and bellowed. The 5th prince's heart shook, and he immediately put away his unrealistic thoughts. If he really did that, not only would the gray-robed emperor not let him off, but he would also be severely punished when his father returned. Thinking of Dong Fong Xia's strictness, the 5th prince quickly retreated. When the 1st prince saw this scene, he felt a wave of disappointment. He had hoped that the 5th prince would interrupt Su Yu's comprehension. On the 15th day, Su Yu still had not awakened. On the 16th day, on the 17th day, until the 20th day. Isn't this too strange? Even with 200 drops of Tao rain, it is impossible to comprehend for so long, right? That's right. The 5th prince has the purest blood crystal Bodhi and 130 drops of Tao rain, but he has only managed to comprehend for 14 days. Is he really asleep? Even the calm and composed gray-robed emperor started to feel suspicious. The situation before them was beyond their expectations. Was this person really comprehending, or was he feigning ignorance because he was afraid of the bet? Just as the crowd was guessing, Suyu opened his eyes without warning half a day later. A trace of disappointment flashed across his face without the slightest concealment. Seeing this look, the anxious fifth prince and first prince heaved a sigh of relief. It looked like he had encountered a huge problem with his comprehension. Otherwise, he would not have such an expression. He has finally finished comprehending. There are so many of us waiting for him. Haha, the next part is the highlight. I want to see how the sixth prince will bluff his way through. The comprehension was over, but the best part was yet to come. Regardless of whether it was the bet between the fifth and sixth prince or the first prince, there would be a good show to watch. That was why so many people were willing to wait until now. The gray-robed old man flew down, holding a coiling dragon ruler in his hand, and said, "Princes and princesses, this old man will personally test the degree of condensation of your nomological laws. We'll follow the order of leaving first. Fourth prince, go first." The fourth prince strode forward, his face full of confidence. "Hold the dragon ruler and activate the chain of law that you have condensed. The degree of purity will be displayed on the dragon ruler." The fourth prince nodded and took a deep breath. He held the dragon ruler and closed his eyes, activating the chain of law that he had just condensed. The gray-robed emperor stared at the shining dragon ruler and announced expressionlessly, "The law of ice, degree of purity, 70%. The crowd was filled with shock. How envious! 70% is very close to completion. With the remaining 30%, he can prepare to break through the door of the divine warrior. In the near future, there will be another divine warrior of heaven and earth in the royal family." The fourth prince retreated amidst the envy of the crowd. Next was the third prince. He held the dragon ruler in the same way as the fourth prince. Soon, the dragon ruler gave off a glow slightly brighter than the fourth prince's. The law of water, degree of purity, 80%. The gray-robed elder forced a smile on his face. There was another wave of exclamations. One is more powerful than the other. The third prince has a high chance of becoming the divine warrior of heaven and earth. Next was the second prince. As the crowd waited expectantly, the dragon ruler gave off an even brighter glow. The gray-robed elder's expression became more joyful. "Haha, the law of earth, degree of purity, 90%. As soon as he said that, the crowd gasped. "My God, 90%. Becoming a divine warrior is almost certain." The second prince does not usually reveal himself. To think that he is so talented. The gray-robed elder smiled. It was obvious that he was in a good mood. "Fifth prince and Princess Rookin, come up." "Haha, I'll go first." The fifth prince stared at Suyu and volunteered to hold the dragon ruler. Buzz. Chapter 1809. The gray-robed elder was overjoyed. This is a complete chain of rules. A moment later, the elder stroked his beard and smiled. The law of darkness has been condensed, 100%. At once, the entire vicinity of the altar was in an uproar. What? He has condensed a complete law? Doesn't that mean he only needs to train his soul to the level of an emperor, then train his cultivation level to the peak of half-emperor to become an emperor of heaven and earth? Unbelievable. He will definitely become an emperor of heaven and earth. Unlike the increase in cultivation level in the past, the most important thing to become an emperor of heaven and earth was not the divine energy or soul, but the law. As long as the law was condensed completely, the probability of becoming an emperor was almost 100%. This time, the royal family has really exploded. Forget the fact that the second prince had a 90% condensation. Now there is a complete one. TSK. The royal family will definitely have at least 2 more emperor of heaven and earth. The envious gazes of the crowd greatly satisfied the fifth prince's vanity. As a result, the crowd's contempt for him was swept away. Once one became an emperor, he would be in existence above all others, the complete opposite of an overlord. in the entire Du Empire who had the right to look down on an emperor. No one. Being an emperor meant supreme glory. He looked at the expressionless Su Yu proudly, his eyes filled with mocking laughter. It was as if he could already imagine Su Yu's pitiful fate when he owed him 100,000 divine stones. The gray-robed emperor also felt gratified, laughing. Ha! The new generation excels the old. The future belongs to you young people. With you, the royal family can protect the empire for another 10,000 years. Let me try to. Princess Rookin, who had been neglected by the crowd, ran over with a smile. The gray-robed elder was in a good mood. Haha, why don't you try too? You have been comprehending for so long. You should have gained a lot, right? He was hoping that Princess Rookin could also condense a complete chain of rules. But the probability was not high. Putting aside the fact that Princess Rookin's talent was ordinary and there was nothing outstanding about her, she was also rather muddle-headed. Her comprehension abilities were probably far inferior to the fifth prince's. Furthermore, the fifth prince had been able to condense a complete chain of rules because he had swallowed a unique, pure blood crystal body. Princess Rookin would only be able to condense 80% of it at most, and that was just a wild guess. In reality, it might not even be 80%. Princess Ru-chun grasped the coiling dragon ruler with great interest and activated the chains of laws condensed in her body. Soon enough, the coiling dragon ruler reacted. First, there was a violent tremor. Then, the multicolored light grew to a height of 10,000 zhong. The signs were exactly the same as the fifth prince's. The gray-robed old man's pupils constricted, and he exclaimed, "A complete chain of law." The crowd, who had yet to return to their senses from the fifth prince's stunning performance, were once again shocked by the dazzling light. Their eyes were filled with shock. Princess Rookin has also condensed a complete chain of laws. Didn't the rumors say that Princess Rookin was a complete little fool? How could he comprehend the complete chains of laws? The expressions of the five princes who were present also changed. Even the first prince was shocked. My sister, how did she complete it? The second prince was a little dazed. He couldn't believe it. The reason why the princes were exceptionally close to Princess Rookin was because she was the most harmless. Be in terms of scheming or talent, she was far inferior to them. However, the scene before them overturned their understanding. The fifth prince's ability to condense a complete set of laws was largely due to the special blood crystal body. However, what right did his sister have? Her shocking performance really caught many of her royal brothers off guard. The fifth prince was also stunned. After a while, he stammered, "My sister, you've also condensed a complete set of laws?" Princess Rookin stuck out her tongue and chuckled. Only fifth brother is allowed to have some accomplishments. Can't I give everyone a little surprise? Everyone was shocked. The gray-robed emperor was stunned for a moment. Then he announced joyfully, "100 Flowers Laws 100% condensed." He was rather agitated, and his pale face brimmed with joy. He could not help but laugh out loud. Ha ha! It's really the Tianqing royal family. Within 10 years, the royal family will definitely produce 2 divine sovereigns of heaven and earth. The spectators felt complicated emotions. This was especially so for the second-tier king conferring representatives. They felt even more bitter. Compared to the eye-catching members of the royal family, their best result was merely condensing 60% of the chain of laws. The density of the path reign naturally determined that their gains were far inferior to the royal families. For a moment, everyone felt extremely conflicted, and they all looked a little down. The gray-robed elder was very sad. He looked at Princess Rookin with a loving gaze. I have some manuals for when I broke through to the martial emperor realm back then. It contains my understanding back then. After the two of you go down, come to my mansion. I'll give you some pointers. His words drew the jealousy of the crowd once again. How many unnecessary steps could they take with the pointers of the double-crowned divine sovereigns? Princess Rookin's small face was filled with surprise. To her, this was a significant gain. Thank you, Grandpa Grey-Robe. Princess Rookin's small mouth was sweet, and the gray-robed elder burst into laughter. The fifth prince's mood improved. Even though his outstanding performance had been suppressed by Princess Rooken's rise, it did not matter. The scene he was most looking forward to had yet to play out. Haha, sixth brother, until when are you going to hide? You've been pretending to be asleep for more than 10 days. It's time to show your true colors. The fifth prince stared at Su Yu and smiled sinisterly. The crowd's emotions were stirred up again. Most of them had waited until now to watch a shocking, grand gamble. Even though there was no suspense in the outcome, it was still worth watching. The gray-robed elder's smile faded, and he looked at Su Yu expressionlessly. Sixth prince, it's your turn. The onlookers began to clamor. Go ahead. So many of us have been waiting for you for so many days. Don't dawdle any longer. Among the crowd, the first prince was calm and unruffled. The fifth prince had formed a complete chain of rules, and he was undefeatable. No matter how many chains of rules Su Yu formed, there was nothing to fear. This was a huge gamble, and they were bound to win. Su Yu's expression was calm. He came before the coiling dragon ruler, and as the crowd urged him, he grabbed the coiling dragon ruler. After a moment, the coiling dragon ruler changed slightly. Rays of dim light flickered near the coiling dragon ruler. Seeing this, none of the onlookers found it strange. Princess Rooken sighed silently. She began to think about how to raise the money. 100,000 divine stones was a huge sum even for the princess's mansion. It would be difficult to gather it in a short time. The first imperial prince and the fifth imperial prince relaxed at the same time, feeling much more relaxed. The dust had settled, and there was no longer any suspense. The gray-robed elder frowned slightly. 40% condensation? Sixth prince, you have disappointed me. The rest of the princes had at least 60% condensation. 40% condensation showed how stupid the sixth prince was. However, the next moment, when the specific information appeared, the gray-robed elder's expression changed abruptly. His aged face was filled with shock. This is the law of life. My God, it is one of the supreme 8 great laws of heavenly law. As soon as he said that, the smiling faces of the fifth prince and the first prince stiffened. The onlookers, who had been sneering, also seemed to be frozen in place. Most of the people present were overlords, and they had a certain understanding of the laws. There were tens of thousands of laws in the world, and they were innumerable. However, there were 8 main laws, which are the main components of the entire world. It could be said that the rest of the laws were derived from the 8 great laws. They were also known as the 8 great profound meanings of the heavenly law, and they were the most profound laws. They were time, space, soul, life, death, fate, reincarnation, and creation. Those who could comprehend any of the 8 great laws and condense a law were all geniuses that were hard to find in the world. The degree of the law that Su Yu had condensed might have been very low, but the object of the condensation was the law of life, one of the 8 great laws. The gray-robed elder opened his eyes wide, his expression extremely excited. He was even more excited than the fifth prince, who had condensed a complete law. Unbelievable! This is unbelievable. We are a 3-star civilization, far away from the ecliptic palace, and there is still someone who can comprehend one of the legendary 8 great laws. He looked at Su Yu as if he was looking at a peerless treasure. The rest of the people were also greatly shocked. Since ancient times, those who could condense one of the 8 great laws had all achieved earth-shattering feats. To think that the 6th prince, who had attracted the most attention, had actually comprehended a law of such difficulty. It is no wonder that the 6th prince has comprehended the 8 great laws for so long. Ordinary people cannot even touch the profound meaning of the 8 great laws. If it were the 5th prince and Princess Rooken comprehending the profound meaning of life, they might not even be able to condense 20% of it. My God, how extraordinary is the 6th prince's level of comprehension, to be able to condense 40% of the law of life. This is unprecedented in the Dayu Empire. TSK, if I had not seen it with my own eyes, I would not have believed that someone could condense the law of life. His future is limitless if he can complete the chain of the law of life. The crowd was in an uproar. even more so than the fifth prince's. It could be imagined that the sixth prince's reputation would spread throughout the entire empire, far surpassing that of the fifth prince. The fifth prince clenched his fists tightly. His limelight had been overshadowed by Su Yu. But on second thought, so what if he had overshadowed Su Yu? At least from the looks of it, he had won. In terms of the degree of condensation, he had 100%, while the other party had 40%. A sly smile formed at the corner of his mouth. The gray-robed elder sized Su Yu up for a long time. This sixth prince had given him too many surprises. The law of life, the results of your comprehension this time, can be said to be astonishing. The gray-robed elder pondered for a long time. The joy on his face gradually faded, and a hint of regret filled his eyes. With your level of comprehension, if you had chosen to condense an ordinary law, I believe you would have absolute confidence in completing the condensation. But you chose to condense a law that should not be condensed. The crowd pondered for a moment and suddenly understood. They looked at Su Yu with eyes full of sympathy. The difficulty of condensing the law of life was beyond imagination. This time, with the help of the Dao Rain, he had barely condensed 40% of it. In the future, unless he had a great opportunity comparable to the Dao Rain, he would not be able to advance further. And if the law could not be condensed completely, he would not be fated to become an emperor. Chapter 1810. Sigh. After you go down, come to my mansion. Over the years, I have learned a little about the law of life. I will teach you all of it. I hope it will be of help to you. The gray-robed elder sighed and patted his shoulder comfortingly. Although you lost the bet, from a certain perspective, you won. He also felt sorry for Su Yu. Just as he was comforting him, Su Yu suddenly said, "My test is not over yet. It is still too early to make a conclusion." The gray-robed emperor was stunned. The fifth prince and the first prince were also stunned. The onlookers were all dumbfounded. They stared at Su Yu in shock. What did he mean? Wasn't the test over? Right at this moment, the coiling dragon ruler, which had just fallen silent, suddenly shook violently and let out a vigorous and powerful dragon roar. A green pillar of light shot up into the sky. The light was extremely dazzling, enveloping the entire imperial city in a green light. The scene was almost the same as the scene when the Dao Rain came. The crowd stared blankly at the strange sight before them. The gray-robed elder was even more dazed. He had never seen anyone's law be able to create such a natural phenomenon. Buzz, the coiling dragon ruler, shook violently, and a line of clear words entered the gray-robed emperor's eyes. Seeing the words clearly, the double-crown emperor shuddered. It's one of the 8 great laws, the law of space. The degree of condensation. Hiss, 100%. At that moment, the crowd was dead silent. The reason for the gray-robed emperor's shock reverberated. Their hearts were also shaken by this shout, causing the earth to shake and the mountains to shake. Not to mention the fact that Su Yu had condensed 40% of the law of life. He still had time to condense another of the 8 great laws, the law of space. What made everyone's scalp go numb? And they could not believe that he had succeeded. He had successfully condensed one of the 8 great laws, the law of space. The crowd stood numbly on the spot. They had lost the ability to think, and the word impossible kept circling in their minds. It was not that they did not want to believe it, but that they could not. The gray-robed elder's eyes flashed violently. His body trembled incessantly, and he was in extreme shock. He had lived for tens of thousands of years, and he had seen many strange things. But this was the first time he had ever seen such an unbelievable scene like the one before him. After a long while, he slowly came back to his senses, and the way he looked at Su Yu had completely changed. It was obvious that he was the double-crown martial emperor, an existence far superior to Su Yu. However, the way he looked at Su Yu was filled with deep respect. A mere 3-star civilization could no longer accommodate such a monstrous powerhouse who grasped one of the 8 great laws. Any civilization would fight to have such an astonishing genius. Even the high and mighty Ecliptic Palace would make a special trip to snatch him and nurture him carefully. The gray-robed emperor could sense that the Dayu Empire would enter an unprecedented era of glory in the near future. His brilliance would definitely overshadow any ruler of the Dayu Empire. Crack. The great prince's leisurely posture of sipping tea froze. With a crack in his palm, he crushed the teacup, and the tea splashed all over him. At this moment, he was staring at Su Yu as if he was staring at an unprecedented great enemy. Yes, the eldest prince felt a sense of danger, a danger he had never felt before. A genius who had comprehended one of the 8 great laws would definitely be highly regarded by Imperial Father. A deep murderous intent lingered in his eyes. The 5th prince's face was drained of all color, and his throat was cracking. He wanted to say something, but could not. The shocking, great, heaven-defying reversal had shattered all the beautiful scenes he had imagined, and even pushed him into an abyss of eternal damnation. 100,000 divine stones. His entire fortune was less than 50,000 divine stones. Where could he find the remaining 50,000? Su Yu let go of his hand, his heart filled with regret. He had comprehended every drop of the 100 drops of Tao Rain to the extreme, but it could only support him in condensing the space law and 40% of the life law. It would be great if he could experience a few more drops of Tao Rain. Seeing the faint disappointment in Su Yu's eyes, the gray-robed emperor was both surprised and emotional. The other princes and princesses were overjoyed to have condensed the laws, but Su Yu? Condensing one of the 8 great laws, the space law, and 40% of the life law, was still regretful. In comparison, Su Yu's vision was far greater than the other princes. As expected of someone who trained outside from a young age, the gray-robed emperor attributed everything to Su Yu's experiences. The test ends here, the gray-robed emperor said excitedly, clearing his throat. He could not wait to immediately inform the monarch that among his 6 sons, an unprecedented possessor of the 8 great laws had been born. The crowd left one after another, unable to recover from the shock of witnessing a miracle for a long time. From this day on, the name of the 6th prince, Dongfang Yu, would resound throughout the Dayu Empire and even in nearby civilizations. The 5th prince blended into the crowd and left quietly. He had only taken a few steps when he heard a voice that seemed to be laughing, yet not laughing. 5th Imperial Brother, where are you going? The bet has ended, and it seems like it's time to settle the bet. The crowd made way, exposing the 5th prince. Under the gaze of the crowd, the 5th prince had nowhere to hide. He could only grit his teeth and stiffly pull his face at Su Yu, making an ugly smile. 6th brother, I was just joking with you. You cannot take it seriously. He no longer had the arrogance and haughtiness he had before the Tao Rain. He looked pitiful, like a pitiful worm that had been bullied. Hee. Su Yu walked over, his eyes filled with disdain. If Su Yu was the one who had lost, would he take it as a joke? He wouldn't, as he would use it as a threat to kill Su Yu. Even though he looked pitiful now, Su Yu had spared him and not received any gratitude from him. Instead, he would continue to think of ways to harm Su Yu. Eunuch Chao, as a witness, do you think a bet made by a prince can be considered a joke? Su Yu said. Eunuch Chao laughed. 6th prince, you must be joking. The bet was made in front of everyone. Both parties were willing, and there were witnesses. Naturally, it is valid. If this matter was reported to the monarch, the 6th prince would still stand on the side of reason. He did not think much of the 5th prince. He had aggressively forced the 6th prince to participate in an unfair bet, and even used sophistry to claim that it was fair. In the end, he had lost so badly despite having such a huge advantage. Not only that, he even intended to renege on the bet. That was the bet that he had initiated, and it was in front of everyone. How dare he say it was a joke? He loathed such a prince from the bottom of his heart. 5th prince, please honor the bet and give the 6th prince 100,000 divine stones. If you do not have enough divine stones, write an IO, Eunuch Chao said with a smile. The 5th prince shuddered. After hesitating for a long time, he took out a space storage device. I only have 50,000 divine stones, and the remaining 50,000 IOU. Su Yu took the 50,000 divine stones without hesitation. I can give you the remaining 50,000 IOU, but you must return it within a month. Otherwise, I will take the sixth brother of the fifth prince's residence as payment for the debt. Also, all the items on you, including the items in the storage space and the treasures you carry with you, will be confiscated to pay the debt. If that is not enough, then I hope that the fifth prince will reluctantly sign a contract to be a servant in the sixth brother's residence until you pay off the debt. Hearing this, the onlookers gasped. How ruthless! The fifth prince was even more furious. A month? Are you kidding me? Where am I going to find 50,000 divine stones for you in a month? That's your problem. You were the one who forced me to take part in the bet. Now that I have lost, you can't blame me, right? So you took out a pen and paper. With a few strokes, he wrote the IOU. Fifth brother, sign it. The fifth prince was furious. Dongfang, you don't go too far. You do not have the slightest bit of experience in the imperial palace. Don't be too arrogant. Haha, you were the one who bullied me. How did it become me bullying you? So you walked over and stared at him. Are you going to sign this or not? The fifth prince shed all pretense of cordiality. So what if I don't sign it? What can a foreign bastard like you do to me? The word bastard was particularly harsh. Perhaps some people thought so, but they would not dare say it out loud. Dongfang Xiao's harsh punishment was inevitable. The fifth prince's words showed that he did not intend to complete the bet. Suyu smiled. What can I do to you? Fifth brother, you are very confident in your abilities. Or are you looking down on me? Humph. No matter how weak I am, I'm still stronger than you. The techniques and treasures he used in the imperial palace were all top-notch items in the Dayu Empire. Suyu, who spent most of his time traveling, could not be compared to them. Haha, is that so? Suyu clasped his left hand behind his back and clenched his right hand. The bright red azura sword appeared in his palm. Then let me see where fifth brother's courage comes from. Demon Master's world. Turbulent demonic energy burned the giant's sword. As he waved it, layers of illusions appeared. The fifth prince was stunned, and he instantly fell into a daze. But a jade pendant on his neck suddenly turned cold, waking him up from his daze. Illusion technique? The fifth prince was shocked. He hurriedly took out his dark sword and waved it. Dozens of strange, curved sword shadows attacked Suyu's flaws from all directions. As expected of a member of the royal family. Even though he only had the cultivation of a peak overlord, he was much more difficult to deal with than ordinary overlords. Now that he had unleashed the Demon Master's world, it was much stronger than before. Ordinary peak overlords would be killed before they could even wake up. For the fifth prince to be able to wake up in advance and to wield such strange sword shadows, his abilities were extraordinary. Not a bad swordsmanship. It is similar to the law of shadow that you have condensed, Suyu commented casually. However, in the face of absolute power, it is all a sham. As he spoke, the shadow of the Azura sword in his palm smashed down, forming an arc-shaped shock wave around him that swept across the surroundings. The twisted sword shadows that attacked were crushed like bubbles. The sharp sword light swept towards the fifth prince with irresistible force. He was shocked. He was extremely satisfied and confident with his shadow swordsmanship. It had an incomparable restraining effect on people of the same level. However, although they were both swordsmanship, the opponent's sword shadow was more than a level stronger. It directly crushed his swordsmanship. In a panic, he used his sword to block in front of his chest. At the same time, the surface of his body flickered with divine light. A layer of bronze-colored protective armor covered him from head to toe. Chapter 1811. Suyu laughed, the giant sword slashing down with crushing force. The loud rumble completely drowned out the fifth prince's roar. The crowd's pupils dilated as they witnessed the shocking scene. The black sword in the fifth prince's hand was broken by the great force flying out of his hand. The armor on the surface of his body was pierced through like a piece of paper by the blood-red giant sword. Wah! The giant sword smashed into his chest, causing the fifth prince to spit out a mouthful of blood. His body was sent flying into the altar. Every inch of his limbs was fractured. He coughed violently, coughing out bloody chunks of flesh. His insides were rotten. The crowd felt their scalps go numb as they witnessed the scene. At the same cultivation level, the sixth prince's sword techniques completely crush the fifth prince's. The sixth prince's abilities are beyond compare. My God, the sixth prince had hidden such powerful abilities. The onlookers were horrified, once again shocked by the sixth prince's sword. Whoosh! Suyu gripped the Shura sword and walked in front of the fifth prince. He lifted his chin with the cold blade and calmly said, "Fifth brother, what do you think a foreign bastard like me can do to you now?" The fifth prince raised his head, his face full of hatred. "Dongfang you." Slap. Suyu kicked his face and stepped on him, calmly saying, "It's not nice to call me by my name." Such humiliating behavior drew the ire of the other princes. The second prince scolded, "Sixth brother, enough is enough. Everything is done in moderation." The third and fourth princes also looked at him unkindly, as if disgusted by Suyu's actions. Suyu turned his head to look at them, his lips curving. "Why? Are the three princes planning to pay for my fifth brother's debt? If so, then everyone will be happy. If not, then please shut up." When the fifth prince was acting shamelessly, forcing him to participate in the bet, the other princes did not stand up for him. Now that the fifth prince was at a disadvantage, they all stood up for him. In the end, they did not approve of Suyu, the newly joined sixth prince. If that was the case, why should Suyu be polite to them? "Sixth brother, you are being presumptuous." The second prince's face darkened, his half-martial artist aura leaking out. His faintly discernible threatening gaze stared straight at Suyu, secretly warning him. The third prince and the fourth prince also looked over coldly, and it seemed like they were about to attack. It was 3 against 1, and one of them was a half-step martial emperor. Most people thought that Suyu was in a disadvantageous situation. Only Princess Ru-chan knew that the 3 princes were looking for trouble. She looked on with an expressionless face, but her heart was bursting with joy. It would be fun if all of her competitors were injured by Suyu before the fight for the destiny of the nation. Suyu chuckled. "All 3 of you can come at me together." On the one hand, he disliked the princes, but on the other hand, he didn't want to be involved in the conspiracy. If he could intimidate them with absolute force, he believed that the days ahead would be much quieter. The second prince narrowed his eyes and said, "Sixth brother, it is a taboo to be arrogant. As your elder brothers, it is necessary for you to teach them basic manners." Both sides were at daggers drawn, ready to attack at any moment. The gray-robed sovereign watched coldly from aside. He could no longer watch the members of the royal family engage in a chaotic battle in front of everyone. "Everyone stop!" He let out a light grunt. A formless energy dispersed the divine energy that the second prince, third prince, and fourth prince had secretly accumulated, forcing the 3 of them to retreat. As for Suyu, he was intentionally shielded by the sovereign and was not affected. Such unfair treatment caused the expressions of the 3 princes to turn ugly. Was there such special treatment for someone who had comprehended the 8 great laws? The one who attacked was Suyu, not them. The 3 of them were secretly hateful, but they did not dare act rashly in front of the gray-robed sovereign. They unwillingly withdrew the divine techniques that they had secretly prepared, glaring at Suyu with hostility. Fifth prince, as a prince of the Diyu Empire, every word and action is an example to the world. The gray-robed sovereign lectured expressionlessly. "Since you initiated the bet, you must bear the consequences regardless of the outcome. You have to sign the promissory note, even if you don't want to." His words clarified his stance. Even if Suyu was unreasonable, he would still stand by Suyu's side. The future achievements of someone who had mastered the law of space were not just for show. If he did not support him, should he support someone else? The fifth prince's face turned as white as a sheet. The gray-robed sovereign had personally spoken. He could not deny this debt. Otherwise, if he were to casually mention this in front of his father, the fifth prince could not imagine what would happen to him. "If you are unwilling, I do not mind forcing you to sign it." The gray-robed sovereign's expression turned cold. The fifth prince shuddered, hurriedly saying, "I'll sign it. I'll sign it now." Rustle, rustle. The fifth prince's signature immediately appeared on the promissory note. Haha. Fifth brother. Remember, you only have a month's time. The fifth prince clenched his teeth. Now that things had come to this, he could only bite the bullet and gather the money. Otherwise, he would never be able to lift his head again if he became a servant in Dongfang Yu's manor. Putting away the promissory note, Su Yu looked at the ashen-faced first prince with a faint smile. Under his gaze, the first prince's body trembled slightly. Without waiting for Su Yu to speak, he said, "I was the one who placed the bet. Naturally, I will compensate you according to the hidden odds." Sixth brother bet 30,000 divine stones that he would win. The odds are 5 times the bet. That would be 150,000 divine stones. The first prince's heart was bleeding. 150,000 divine stones was more than half of his assets. His life savings had turned into someone else's. Enduring the pain, he took out a space storage device and stored the bags of divine stones into it. Finally, he passed it to Su Yu. Everyone present was filled with envy and jealousy at the sight. In just 20 days, the number of divine stones had increased 5-fold. 150,000 divine stones was an astronomical figure. Many divine warriors of heaven and earth might not even have such a fortune. Thank you, first brother. Su Yu accepted it without hesitation, his face full of smiles. Sixth brother, you have a share. Princess Rukin's eyes sparkled as she threw herself at Su Yu, hugging his arm affectionately. Let's go back to the manor and slowly divide it. Su Yu nodded with a smile. Today, he had been in the limelight and had offended all the princes. It was not appropriate for him to stay for long. Elder, I shall take my leave. Su Yu cupped his fists at the gray-robed sovereign. He nodded at Song Yan's head with a smile. You have just condensed the chain of rules today. When you go back, you must settle down and continue to consolidate it. Many overlords condensed the chain of rules, but due to carelessness, the chains became unstable and started to crumble. Don't follow in their footsteps. I will follow your instructions, Elder. Su Yu bowed gratefully, then left the altar quickly under Princess Rukin's urging. Back at the manor, with a bang, Princess Rukin closed the door. Not long after, a beam of light followed her into the house. Princess Rukin pointed with her delicate hands and set up enchantments around the house. Only then did she look at Su Yu with a complicated expression. After a long while, she said slowly, "You have really surprised us, Su Yu." After witnessing the Tao rain with his own eyes, Su Yu's series of performances could be said to be unprecedented. Now, his reputation was probably above that of all the other princes. The possessor of the space rule, one of the 8 great rules, a prince with a limitless future, a deep sense of uneasiness welled up in Emperor Wuhan's heart. Princess Rukin was straightforward. She stared at Su Yu and said, "Brother, if you say now that you're not a member of the Dayu Empire's royal family, no one will believe you, right? If you ascend the throne as the emperor, I believe that the people of the world will look to you even more, and no one will question you." Even the gray-robed emperor, who had always been neutral, had extended an olive branch to Su Yu. If he became the emperor, there would be very little resistance. Her question was rather incisive and extremely direct. She suspected that Su Yu would take the throne for real and seize the throne. Su Yu had long known that the two of them would hold a grudge against him. He pointed at himself and said, "Do you think that I can deceive the world, but can I deceive the emperor? My identity is an insurmountable obstacle. No matter how outstanding I am, I can never become the emperor of the Dayu Empire." The two women's expressions did not ease much, because during the test, Su Yu's identity was no longer determined by the royal bloodline, but by the special destiny of the country that the royal family was born with. The bloodline could be diluted and disappear, but the destiny of the country that came with it in the womb would not. At this moment, no one would believe that she was not a prince. Even Dongfang Xia might not be able to deny her identity. If Su Yu is really ambitious, coupled with the gray-robed emperor's support, his chances of winning the fight for the throne would not be low. So you had a headache. My heart is not in the empire, but in the martial path, which is even further away. You can rest assured about this. In the fight for the throne, I will keep my promise and help Princess Rukin. If you do not believe me, I will leave the Dayu Empire now, so that you do not have to worry about me." Seeing that the two women were uneasy, Suyu frowned. Since he had said this, the two women could only believe him. "Will the fight for the throne begin? And what kind of fight will it be? You should explain the details to me, right?" The other party had kept her promise and helped Suyu obtain the Daorain. He would also do his best to help Princess Rukin. In half a month, Emperor Wuhan's expression was filled with nervousness. "So urgent? The Dayu Empire has a treasured land called the Dayu Ruins. It is the root of the empire and the source of the Dayu civilization," Emperor Wuhan said. "In the Dayu Ruins, there is a remnant of the nation's fortune. The nation's fortune has fused with the ancient beasts in the ruins' special environment. The only way to obtain the nation's fortune is to kill the ancient beasts. Fighting for the nation's fortune was not so simple. The stronger the ancient beasts, the more the nation's fortune in their bodies, and vice versa." Suyu muttered, "I wonder how strong the ancient beasts are." Emperor Wuhan's eyes flashed. "Very strong. Even the emperors cannot guarantee their survival in there, as there are a few terrifying ancient beasts of the double-crowned emperor level." Hearing this, Suyu's pupils shrank. Double-crowned emperor. Who could kill an ancient beast of that level? Even if the princes and princesses joined forces, they would not be able to harm a single hair on its body. Having interacted with Huang Fu Liang, Suyu knew the difference between a double-crowned emperor and a single-crowned emperor. The difference of one crown was like the difference of a whole realm. Therefore, the amount of the nation's fortune that can be obtained is largely dependent on the number of single-crown emperor ancient beasts that can be killed. Is that so? Suyu's eyes were filled with worry. He had experienced the difficulty of killing a martial emperor when he fought with Huan Yulangjun. It was not easy. Even though he had mastered the space law, he was not completely confident. The demonic sword technique had been stuck at the bottleneck of the sixth stroke, and the power of the royal dragon sword was limited by the dragon blood in Suyu's body. Chapter 1812. However, if it was just killing one or two, he could still do it. You don't have to worry too much. You won't be the only one vying for the nation's destiny this time. The others will also follow you. Princess Rukin raised her snow-white chin like a little peacock. I've made a lot of preparations for this day. So you couldn't help but recall Princess Rukin and Emperor Wuhan's plan to search for the hidden Overlord strong men in the Imperial City. Now, it's time for you to meet each other, Princess Rukin said. She led Suyu out of the mansion without giving him a chance to speak. They arrived in an inconspicuous manner in the Imperial City. Outside the manor was an illusion formation that Emperor Wuhan had personally set up. Ordinary people would not be able to see through it. After entering, there was indeed a completely different world inside. There were more than 20 cultivation caves lined up side by side. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Sensing Princess Rukin's aura, over 20 figures shot out of their cultivation dwellings one after another. They appeared before Princess Rukin and knelt down. "Greetings, Princess Rukin." Suyu's gaze swept over them, and he was slightly surprised to see that they were all peak overlords. Among them was a powerful being of half-step to martial emperor. It was the girl next door who was in the same batch as Suyu. There were signs of the chains of law fluctuating on their bodies. It seemed like they had been baptized by the Daorain. They must have been like Suyu, exchanging the Daorain with Princess Rukin to help him seize the destiny of the nation. Haha, I'm sure everyone here is familiar with the person beside me, right? Everyone looked up, and their expressions changed drastically. Sixth Prince. The Sixth Prince's stunning performance had just ended not long ago. Regardless of whether it was his mastery of the laws of space or his absolute strength that had crushed the Fifth Prince with a single sword strike, they both gave them immense pressure that was unparalleled. It really is the Sixth Prince. I'm actually lucky enough to see the Sixth Prince up close. Strange, why is the Sixth Prince here? Princess Rukin smiled mysteriously and asked, "Are you happy to see the Sixth Prince?" The crowd looked at Suyu with respect. "We are honored to be able to meet the Sixth Prince." Hee, very happy, right? Then this princess will tell you something even more delightful. Princess Rukin revealed a playful expression. The Sixth Prince before you will work together with you and lead you to seize the nation's luck for this princess. What? His words roused the spirits of everyone present. The sixth prince's strength was obvious to all, and it would undoubtedly be much safer to travel with such an expert. Is this true? Haha, with the sixth prince joining us, our situation won't be any worse. At least, it won't be any worse than the third prince and the fourth prince. Princess Ru-chun was quite gratified. She had been worried that Su-yu wouldn't be able to integrate with them, but it seemed like she had worried too much. In that case, no one has any objections to the sixth prince's leadership? Princess Rukin asked. Everyone was overjoyed. Who would object? I don't agree. An indifferent voice objected from the crowd. Although his voice was not loud, it suppressed the laughter of the crowd and was exceptionally clear. Following the source of the voice, Zhang Xian saw a beautiful young lady dressed in a white dress. She looked like the little girl next door. Yu Shanshan, why are you not satisfied? Princess Ru-chin frowned. The person who spoke was none other than the only half-step monarch she had recruited. This woman had killed the demonic child all by herself and completed the test. She was the trump card that she relied on the most besides Su-yu to seize the destiny of the nation. Princess Ru-chun had no choice but to take her opinion seriously. Yu Shanshan looked at Su-yu and said, "The ruins of the Diyu are extremely dangerous. The ability of the leader should be more important than his identity." In other words, Su-yu's ability was too weak to take on the heavy responsibility of leading the team. As a half-step monarch, she had the right to say that. Unfortunately, Princess Ru-chun had seen Su-yu's true ability. Even 10 Yu Shanshans combined would not be a match for Su-yu. What if it is my command? Princess Ru-chun frowned. Yu Shanshan calmly said, I will naturally follow your command, but I will not listen to his. She had insisted on rejecting Su-yu's leadership because she wanted to be the leader herself. Princess Ru-chun could not help but feel helpless. If Yu Shanshan insisted on doing this, she would have no choice but to kick her out of the fight for the destiny of the nation. Rather than keeping an unstable factor, it was better to get rid of her as soon as possible. Haha, miss you, right? So you said calmly. Are you certain that your ability is above mine? Yu Shanshan met Su-yu's gaze calmly. Yes, I have no doubt. Then why don't you give it a try? Su-yu stared at her with a faint smile. Yu Shanshan did not say a word. Two strangely shaped crescent blades slid out of her sleeves, one in each hand. I would also like to experience the Sixth Prince's space law. With a smile, the Azura sword appeared in Su-yu's palm. Looking at the icy blade, he let out a light laugh. I don't need space law to deal with you. Then you won't have a chance to use it. Yu Shanshan disappeared into thin air, leaving behind a series of afterimages in the air as she attacked Su-yu's vitals. She was so fast that the onlookers could not lock onto where the real Yu Shanshan was. By the time they saw the afterimages, the crescent blades in the real Yu Shanshan's hands had already pierced Su-yu's chest. Ding! When the crowd heard the clanging sound, they were shocked to see that Su-yu had blocked Yu Shanshan's two crescent blades with the Azura sword in hand. Yu Shanshan's expression changed slightly. What quick reflexes! To be precise, it was Su-yu's excellent eyesight that allowed him to clearly see the direction of the blades. But Yu Shanshan's reaction was equally quick. She swept her right leg, and a crescent blade appeared beneath her foot, sweeping towards Su-yu's legs. This sweep would definitely result in his legs being chopped off. Strangely, none of her movements could escape Su-yu's eyes. It was as if he could predict her movements. With a tap of his feet, he leapt into the air. Yu Shanshan was not discouraged. She leapt into the air as well, and another crescent blade appeared beneath her other foot, stabbing towards Su-yu's chest. Su-yu casually pressed down with the Azura sword, forcing Yu Shanshan's body down by 10 feet. Her foot brushed past the tip of Su-yu's nose. Show me all your other abilities, Su-yu said playfully. Yu Shanshan's expression gradually turned serious. Su-yu's battle experience was unparalleled. Her eyes flashed, and Yu Shanshan let out a low grunt. Then don't blame me for using my full strength. Swords have no eyes, don't blame me. Crack, crack, crack. A scalp-numbing scene entered the eyes of the crowd. Crescent blades appeared from within Yu Shanshan's body. Her head, face, neck, chest, abdomen, thighs. Her entire body was covered in sharp blades. In the blink of an eye, she had transformed from an obedient girl next door to a ferocious human-shaped weapon. Death spin. Yu Shanshan let out a light grunt, turning into a whirling gale that swept towards Su Yu in an instant. The air along the way was sliced by the wind, looking as if it was about to be sliced into pieces. The distance between the two seemed far, but it only took the blink of an eye to reach Su Yu. No matter how strong one's battle experience was, there was no way to block such a rapid whirl. If he could not avoid it, he would definitely be split apart by the swords and die. It looked like a challenge, but it was filled with murderous intent. The crowd also sensed the danger of this move, crying out in alarm. A strange glow flashed in the depths of Princess Rukin's eyes. At such a critical moment, Su Yu was still calm and composed. He held the azure sword and did not retreat. Instead, he attacked. Heaven-cutting sword. A sword rainbow pierced through the whirlwind. A pathetic groan could be heard from within the whirlwind. As a figure spun in midair and crashed heavily onto the ground, the whirlwind dissipated. Yu Shanshan's body was covered in blood, her eyes filled with shock. "You?" she said in shock. The group of peak overlords gasped. Not only had he defeated the fifth prince with a single strike, but Yu Shanshan, who was half a martial artist, had also been defeated with a single strike. His swordsmanship was superb and had reached the pinnacle of perfection. Princess Rukin chuckled. "How is it? My brother's abilities are far above yours." Yu Shanshan looked at Su Yu in shock, her expression complicated and dissatisfied. She said unwillingly, "I'm convinced." She stood up with difficulty, shaking off the broken blades on her body. She glared at Su Yu with an indistinct hatred. "It's too late to say you're convinced." But unexpectedly, Su Yu swept his sword forward once again. It was another heaven-cutting sword. Unlike the previous move, this move was filled with genuine murderous intent. Princess Rukin was shocked. "Brother, stop." The rest of the people were shocked as well. They had not expected Su Yu to suddenly attack after the sparring session. Not to mention that they couldn't stop him. Even if they could, who could stop Su Yu? Yu Shanshan said in shock, "You want to kill me?" Crack, crack, crack. Her snow-white skin glowed with a strange color. In an instant, she had turned into a humanoid metal statue. Unfortunately, she was still unable to block the irresistible heaven-cutting sword. Crack. The metal surface of her body was easily sliced open, the sword mercilessly slicing into her. Ah, a pathetic, pathetic cry reverberated throughout the courtyard. Everyone who saw it was shocked. How had a sparring session turned into a one-sided massacre? The sixth prince was unforgiving, his attack a little too ruthless. Princess Rukin looked at the scene before her in a daze. She could not believe that the half a martial artist she had painstakingly recruited had been killed by Su Yu with a single strike. But the next scene stunned everyone. The sharp sword energy sliced into Yu Shanshan's body, but it was as if it had struck an extremely hard object. Not only did it not penetrate, it was bounced off. "Su Yu, you did it on purpose, didn't you?" Yu Shanshan's eyes were bloodshot. Layers of black were mixed within, making her look extremely strange. The crowd did not understand. Did Yu Shanshan know the sixth prince? From her tone, it seemed like there was a grudge between them. Su Yu smiled casually. "I cannot be bothered with you, but you did not know what was good for you and insisted on provoking me. I had no choice but to grant your wish. It's a pity that the corpse emperor helped you kill the demonic child and arrange for you to join us, but your arrogance ruined everything." As soon as he said that, everyone was shocked. Corpse Emperor? The Emperor of the Corpse Clan? Chapter 1813. Corpse Clan. A shriek broke the silence. "Run. The Corpse Clan is here." Corpse. Corpse Clan. Legend has it that the ancient strong men who died were resurrected as the Corpse Clan. Legend has it that they cannot be killed, no matter what. Impossible. Legend has it that the Corpse Clan only exists in high-grade civilizations. RDU Empire is only a 3-star civilization. How could the Corpse Clan appear here? Run. It is said that the Corpse Clan is at least at the Emperor level. We are no match for them. To the living creatures of 3-star civilizations, the Corpse Clan only existed in ancient books and legends. They were nightmarish existences. In the blink of an eye, they fled in all directions in panic. Even Princess Rookin frowned, her eyes flickering with deep shock. She never expected that the corpse race would actually sneak into her team. Was the corpse clan plotting something? Judging from Su Yu's tone, even the so-called corpse emperor had appeared. The 20 people who were consumed by fear fled in panic, causing the scene to descend into chaos. Amidst the chaos, Yu Shanshan's eyes flickered, and she scuttled into the crowd. With a flash, she launched a sneak attack on Princess Rookin from behind. When she saw the situation spiraling out of control, she had a bad feeling. Just as she was about to stop the crowd, she was unexpectedly attacked from behind. 100 flowers of spring breeze. Princess Rookin's reaction was not slow. Her body dispersed into hundreds of flowers, which scattered in all directions. Yu Shanshan's lips curled up. She reached out with her right hand and touched one of the inconspicuous flowers. Humph! With a soft snort, a figure as small as a speck of dust suddenly flew out from the inconspicuous flowers. The speck of dust was none other than Princess Rookin. There was blood at the corner of her mouth, and her whole body was bright red. It seemed that she had been injured by a great force. "Thank you for protecting me along the way." Yu Shanshan laughed coldly. She flew over and grabbed Princess Rookin's shoulder. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. When Su Yu caught up, Princess Rookin was already in her hands. The sharp blades, all over Yu Shanshan's body, rotated uniformly, sticking closely to Princess Rookin's skin. She could slice Princess Rookin into countless pieces with a single movement. Su Yu flew over with his sword, landing a few thousand feet away from them. He frowned slightly. Taking hostages? It was indeed a little tricky. Of course, he could charge over directly, not caring about Princess Rookin's safety. After all, he had the special ability to revive the dead. However, it was better not to expose this ability in front of everyone. "Su, if you dare to follow me, kill her immediately." Yu Shanshan stared at Su Yu with hatred and slowly retreated. Seeing that Su Yu did not continue to press him, he secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He stared at Su Yu and said coldly, "You have ruined the Corpse Emperor's plan. Just you wait, the Corpse Emperor will not let you off. No one in the whole Diyu Empire can save you." As he spoke, he seized Princess Rookin and teleported away. Su Yu locked onto their auras and chased after them unhurriedly while pondering over her words. No one in the entire Diyu Empire could save him, including Dongfang Xia. Yu Shanshan's words of absolute certainty were not groundless. Speaking of which, Yu Shanshan had seized Princess Rookin and fled. After half a day, they had successfully escaped the imperial city and arrived in the wilderness. In a desolate forest, there was a well-hidden teleportation array. The formation looked like it had just been set up. Landing on the formation, Yu Shanshan immediately activated it. Only then did she heave a sigh of relief. This formation had been set up in consideration of their escape route, if they were to be exposed. She had not expected to use it so soon. Princess Rookin had an uneasy expression. She said carefully, "You are safe now. Can you let me go?" Yu Shanshan's expression was cold, her lips revealing a savage expression. "Your Highness, when have you ever heard of the people of the Corpse Clan being benevolent?" Princess Rookin's face turned pale. Before she could react, Yu Shanshan's sharp blades pierced into her body, ending Princess Rookin's life. Yu Shanshan's lips curled into a deep hatred. "If you die, so you'll have some trouble." Ding! Unexpectedly, when her sharp blades pierced Princess Rookin's body, the technique was blocked by something. She subconsciously thought that it was Princess Rookin's protective robe, but when she looked down, she was stunned. At some point in time, Princess Rookin's snow-white skin had turned pink. The sharp blades pierced the pink skin, but were unable to penetrate it. At the same time, an ice-cold aura suddenly erupted from Princess Rookin's body. Princess Rookin turned her head. Her innocent face no longer had the usual muddle-headedness. Instead, it was filled with deep coldness. A pink flower petal blossomed between her brows, making her look even more bewitching. "Who are you?" Yu Shanshan's expression changed greatly. She could clearly feel that Princess Rookin had changed into a different person. Princess Rookin chuckled, but her laughter was strangely ominous. You forced me out, yet you still ask me who I am. Of course, I am the person who will bestow death upon you. After she spoke, a large expanse of pink flames gushed out of her body, engulfing Yushanshan within. This is the boundless karmic flame that can restrain the corpse clan. After a short period of miserable shrieks, there was a deep silence. Only a mass of pink flames was left on the ground, burning the last of the remains into nothingness. Humph! You overestimate yourself. Princess Rookin snorted coldly. She looked at the horizon, then waved her sleeves and swept away all the ashes on the ground. Following that, the coldness on her face disappeared, and her deep eyes regained their lost and muddle-headedness. Swish! Suyu immediately descended and heaved a sigh of relief when he discovered that Princess Rookin was safe and sound. Where is she? Suyu surveyed the surroundings, and his gaze fell upon the transportation spell on the ground. He furrowed his brows slightly. Did you prepare for this? Princess Rookin patted her chest with lingering fear. It was so scary. I thought I was dead for sure. Suyu said carelessly, It doesn't matter even if you died. Since there was no one here, reviving Princess Rookin would not attract any attention. What did you say? Princess Rookin widened her big, round eyes angrily. Suyu's expression became awkward, and he hurriedly corrected himself. It's fine as long as you are safe. Humph! I'm not deaf. Princess Rookin snorted, then said angrily, This time, it's all your fault. You failed to kill the corpse, and I almost died because of you. All right, it's my fault. Let's return to the mansion first. The transportation spell might be guarded by the corpse clan. Suyu glanced at the surroundings vigilantly. Princess Rookin felt a lingering fear, so she obediently followed Suyu and left the place. She did not notice that Suyu had secretly glanced at the spell on the ground before he left. A hint of suspicion flickered in the depths of his eyes. To the corpse clan that he had come into contact with, it was difficult to believe that the corpse clan would keep their promise and release her. It was more likely that they would kill Princess Rookin and turn her into one of their own. Yet, they had actually released her. This was really unexpected. Moreover, although the transportation spell seemed to have just been used, so you could feel that there were no spatial fluctuations nearby, which meant that the transportation spell had not been successfully activated. If that was the case, what about Yushanshan? Why would Princess Rookin lie? Suyu glanced at her seemingly innocent face out of the corner of his eye, and a hint of surprise quietly disappeared. When they returned to the mansion, Princess Rookin angrily placed her hands on her waist, and her eyes were wide open as she reprimanded the 20-odd peak overlords, who were standing in a row and lowering their heads in shame. Cowards! A bunch of cowards! You were so scared when you saw the corpse clan. You almost killed me because of you. She wore an exasperated look on her face. Everyone looked at each other in dismay, all of them embarrassed. If not for the wise and courageous sixth brother, you wouldn't have met the adorable princess. Princess Rookin praised them repeatedly, making them not know whether to laugh or cry. In any case, your performance this time around has really disappointed me. We know our mistakes. Please be magnanimous, princess. The crowd pleaded. Only then did Princess Rookin feel slightly better. She snorted and said, Then I will give you a chance to atone for your mistakes. In the ruins of the Great U, remember to fight for me. I will now give you the tools to store the nation's fortune. If you can't bring back the nation's fortune that satisfies me, you will suffer. After a series of threats, she gave each of them a bag that had a strange formation imprinted on it. After killing the ancient beast in the ruins, the nation's fortune in the ancient beast's body would leave its body when the ancient beast's life force disappeared. That would be the only chance to collect the nation's fortune. This special bag was specially made by the royal family, and it was the only tool that could absorb the nation's fortune. Back at the mansion, Suyu studied the ruins of the Great U as he trained. The ruins of the Great U had a very long history. It could even be traced back to the beginning of the Great U Empire hundreds of millions of years ago. Apart from ancient beasts, there were also many rare and exotic objects in the outside world. The most famous was the dragon's beard. It was an essential ingredient for some high-level elixirs, and it was also the favorite of some ancient beasts with the bloodline of the real dragon. This item had never appeared in the outside world, and it was only born in the ruins of the Great Yew. Many advisors were willing to serve the princes not only because of the Dao Rain, but also because of the dragon's beard. If they were to be sold in the outside world, they could fetch at least 1,000 divine stones each. If more than 10 of them were found, it would be a huge harvest of 10,000 divine stones. All the princes had tacitly agreed to let them harvest the dragon's beard. As long as they obtained the nation's fortune, the dragon's beard would belong to them. Suyu did not particularly care about the value of the dragon's beard. Now that he had more than 200,000 divine stones on hand, he was not lacking in divine stones. What he wanted was another use of the dragon's beard. It was the favorite of ancient beasts with the bloodline of the real dragon. The bloodline of the real dragon. The current royal dragon sword was limited by the thinness of the bloodline of the real dragon, and the power it could exert was very limited. If he could obtain some of the blood of the real dragon and further unleash the power of the sword, he believed that his journey in the ruins of the Great Yew would be smoother. After understanding all this, Suyu had some preliminary plans and goals. In the following days, he would mainly focus on improving his abilities. With a thought, Suyu pinched 2 of his fingers together. With a crackling sound, a crescent-shaped, thumb-long space blade appeared between his fingers. While comprehending the Dao Rain, he had a deeper understanding of the power of space. Chapter 1814. The Blade of Space was one of the latest uses that he had comprehended. He had kept it hidden all this time to be his trump card in the ruins of the Great Yew. If I can use it properly, the Blade of Space will be a powerful weapon, he thought to himself. Then, he took out the heavenly bow and the heavenly arrow. If this bow could catch the eye of Shao Dai, its power must be extraordinary. If there's a chance, I must try it out at the ruins of the Great Yew. As Suyu pondered this, he calmed himself down and started to train patiently. Time passed in a flash. A few days later, Suyu had familiarized himself with the Blade of Space. Only then did he leave the training room. There were less than 3 days left. There was no point in continuing to train. With a thought, he went to the princess's mansion next door. Before he stepped into the mansion, he heard Princess Rookin throwing a tantrum. Damn it, you've gone too far. Sigh, there's nothing we can do about it. Emperor Wuhan, who was beside her, comforted her patiently. We'll try our best. There's still a chance to turn things around. How can we try? The gap is much wider than I imagined. I thought that I had secretly recruited many capable aides in the past few years. Who would have thought? Suyu had not intended to interrupt their conversation. Now that he knew it was related to the ruins of the Great Yew, he could not stay out of it. It seems like I've come at the wrong time. He stepped into the mansion. Emperor Wuhan's eyes flashed. He stared at Suyu with a hint of surprise. He did not know why, but he felt a hint of danger from Suyu. You've come at the right time. Emperor Wuhan sighed helplessly. I'm afraid I have to tell you some news in advance. Is it bad news? Suyu sighed. Go ahead. When he finished listening, his expression changed. As they neared the ruins of the Great Yew, the 5 princes' resources were gradually revealed. Princess Rookin had sent people to inquire, but the results were unusually depressing. Even Suyu had a complicated expression. It was only now that he understood how disadvantageous Princess Rookin's situation was. There were at least 50 advisors around the princes. Among them, there were at least 2 or 3 half-step emperors, and at most a dozen. The most powerful was the first prince. He had 100 advisors, 14 of whom were half-step emperors. The rest were all peak overlords. Even the 5th prince had 2 half-step martial emperors and 50 to 60 peak overlords. On the other hand, Princess Rookin did not have a single half-step martial artist, and there were only 20 or so peak stage overlords. With such a huge disparity, how could there be any chance of victory? Even if they had Suyu, who was a great pillar of support, the disparity in numbers was not something that could be easily overcome. Princess Ru Chun gritted her teeth in jealousy. Those damned conferred kings. They give the most outstanding talents in their territories to the princes they support. That's why they have so many advisors. Damn it, Why aren't there any conferred kings supporting me? Although the fight for the crown prince of the Dayu Empire had nothing to do with politics. But in reality, the power of the supporters would be revealed in the process of fighting. Before the fight for the position of heir apparent had even begun, Princess Rukin was already doomed to defeat. And this was because she had secretly recruited quite a few experts in advance. Otherwise, Empress Wu Hen could only smile bitterly. They had expected that regal kingship would support the prince in the form of a talent. But the power was greater than he had expected. After all, one is the monarch of a 2-star civilization, and the other is the monarch of a 3-star civilization. Su Yu revealed the reason. Empress Wu Hen was stunned. Only then did she understand the reason. After becoming a 3-star civilization, the Dayu Empire would enter a period of rapid development, and its power would be unprecedentedly great. If it was the monarch of a 2-star civilization, it might not be too important. The support that the various conferred kings could provide to the prince they supported was limited. But the monarch of a 3-star civilization was so important that it could bring his supporters benefits far beyond what they had in the past. Whether they could catch up with the explosive development of the Dayu Empire depended entirely on whether the prince they supported could become the emperor of the empire in the future. That was why the conferred kings would support them crazily at all costs. It also caused the two of them to be caught off guard. Princess Rukin's eyes were brimming with tears. How are we going to compete? There's no hope at all. Empress Wu Hen sighed. They had planned for a long time, and in order to get Su Yu's help, they had even taken the risk and asked him to disguise himself as the 6th prince. However, his efforts were about to go down the drain, and all his previous efforts would be wasted. Su Yu began to ponder. Princess Rukin giving up the fight for the throne was undoubtedly a good thing for him. After entering the ruins, he would not have to fight for the destiny of the nation. His eyes flickered. After a long while, he looked at the two of them and said, "If the two of you need support, I can think of some ways to get some help." Huh? Princess Rukin's eyes widened. She said in disbelief, "You? What help?" Empress Wu Hen was also shocked. He could not understand where Su Yu would get help from. Others might not know, but they knew very well that Su Yu had no foundation in the Dayu Empire. "I can't tell you for now. I need to talk to him in person to know," Su Yu said. Although the two of them were suspicious, they still had the mentality of making every possible effort. "Thank you, Mr. Su. Don't be in a hurry to thank me. I'm not helping you for free." Su Yu waved his hand, his expression slightly downcast. Princess Rukin blinked. "What is it?" Su Yu stared at her. "If you become the crown prince and become the future successor of the emperor, I believe the entire empire will turn to you. Right?" Princess Ru Chan nodded without hesitation. "Of course it is. If I help you get support this time and help you become a crown prince, I hope that you can mobilize all the forces in the Dayu Empire to help me find the whereabouts of 2 people." He took out the portraits of Xia Jingyu and Shangge. Looking at the familiar picture, he felt an indescribable pain in his heart. "In the sea of constellations, I was separated from 2 friends. Their whereabouts are unknown, and I don't know where they are now. I hope that you can mobilize your forces to find them in the Dayu Empire and the surrounding civilizations." "Is it just to find people?" Princess Rukin agreed without hesitation. "It's not a difficult task." "I agree." She took the 2 portraits, her eyes immediately fixed on Xia Jingyu. She did not even blink. Then she opened her mouth wide. "I can't believe there is such a beautiful woman in this world. I'm really jealous." Empress Wu Hen looked over and was also shocked. "She's too beautiful. She doesn't seem like a living thing." So you passed the portraits to Princess Rukin. "I'll leave it to you, Princess. I'll go find someone to talk to." "Wait, do you know the requirements for the people who enter the ruins of the Dayu Empire? You can't enter just because your cultivation is high," Empress Wu Hen said. Su Yu said, "Although you didn't say it, I can guess. First, the people who enter cannot have a cultivation higher than the emperor. Second, they must be geniuses within the age of 30. Empress Wu Hen nodded. "You're half right. There's a third condition. The people of the royal family can ignore the first condition." Hearing that, Su Yu's pupils shrank. This meant that the first prince, the emperor, would not be subject to these restrictions. Suyu nodded his head and left. Princess Rookin looked at his back, her face filled with surprise. Aunt, apart from the 10 great conferred kings, who else can provide support to us? Empress Wu Hen frowned. The power of the Diu Empire lies in the royal family, the 10 great feudal lands, and the experts scattered among the people. It would be useless for Suyu to go to the royal family and the feudal lands. As for the people, there are only a few emperors, but the chances are slim. I've already visited them, but they rejected me tactfully. I believe they already have someone they like to support. Emperors? They can't participate in the ruins of the Diu Empire, so what's the point of asking them? Princess Rookin scratched her head foolishly. Empress Wu Hen said solemnly, "Don't underestimate them. For them to be able to establish themselves in the Diu Empire, they must have deep connections and connections. The number of people they know is beyond our imagination. If they are willing to help us with all they have, gathering a group of young geniuses below the emperor level might not be a difficult task." Princess Rookin understood and said, "Aunt, you went to visit those emperors personally, but they rejected you. Does Suyu have the confidence to convince one of them?" Sigh. That's what I can't figure out. Most of them already have someone they like to support. Even if they don't, I'm sure a few of the princes have sent people to persuade them. I'm afraid it will be very difficult for Suyu to convince the emperors. Princess Rookin's small face darkened, as she became a little listless. After Suyu left the mansion, he disguised himself and left the palace, arriving at the Yi-Chi Weapon Alliance. As the most prosperous holy land of craftsmanship in the Diu Empire, it was still bustling with people and carriages. "I want to see the emperor of the Yi-Chi," Suyu said to the shopkeeper on duty as he came to the counter. The shopkeeper raised his head, his eyelids drooping. He said calmly, "Everyone wants to see the emperor of the Yi-Chi, but not everyone can." Suyu laughed, his attitude exactly the same as the last time he came. Slap. He slapped a leaf-shaped, true Emperor Divine weapon on the counter and said, "Then, I believe the Emperor of the Yi-Chi must have told you to report to him immediately if a customer comes here who is blinded by a single leaf." The shopkeeper was shocked by the sudden noise, but then he realized something. "You mean blinded by a single leaf?" When his gaze fell on the leaf-shaped magical artifact on the table that was emitting a shocking spiritual pressure, he became respectful and changed his undisciplined attitude. He hurriedly went around the counter and said enthusiastically, "So, it's you, esteemed customer. I had eyes but failed to recognize you. Don't say anything unnecessary. Report to the Emperor of the Yi-Chi immediately." Yes, please wait a moment." The shopkeeper invited Suyu into the VIP room and ordered people to serve him good tea. He then secretly contacted the Emperor of the Yi-Chi, who rarely showed his face. Before long, the shopkeeper hurried back in a hurry, looking a little embarrassed. "Esteemed customer, please wait a little longer. The Emperor is meeting with an important guest, so he asked you to wait a moment." "Oh, the guest is more important than the golden flames forbidden wood? What guest?" Suyu frowned. The shopkeeper was a little hesitant, but when he thought of how much the Emperor valued Suyu, he dared not offend him. So, he lowered his voice and said, "It's the eldest among the princes." Chapter 18:15. What was he doing here? Did he have the same goal? If that was the case, he had to negotiate with him immediately. As he pondered, he took out the royal seal. The words Dongfang Yu were on it. The shopkeeper's pupil shrank. He stared at Suyu in surprise and shock. "Please tell the Emperor that if he has reached an agreement with the first prince, there is no need to talk to me. I will only wait for 10 minutes, Suyu said calmly. The shopkeeper did not dare hesitate, hurriedly running to report to the Emperor of Ichi. In the central area of the Ichi Weapon Alliance, there was a red stone room that looked like flowing lava. It was protected by layers of seals. Even if several emperors came, they would not be able to break in. In the stone room, the first prince, the fifth prince, and Northwong were all there. Sitting opposite them was a frail old man. His eyes were gray, and he was blind. "Let me think about the conditions of the two princes for a day or two," the Emperor of Ichi said calmly. The first prince was silent, while the fifth prince frowned. The Emperor of Ichi. Do you think that there is someone else who can be the crown prince besides the first prince? The Dayu Empire is currently in an era of great change, an era of unprecedented eruption. Wasn't the reason why the Weapon Alliance was able to gain a foothold in the Dayu Empire because the Alliance Master chose the right side and followed my Imperial Father? Your opponents lost because they chose the wrong side, and they have since disappeared from the Dayu Empire. You should know very well how to choose, right? The Emperor of Ichi laughed hoarsely. His lifeless eyes flashed. The first prince's influence has swept the world. I believe that the possibility of him becoming the crown prince is much higher than the other princes. So, my support is no longer important. Why do the two princes have to keep an eye on me? The fifth prince's anger flashed. If it was not necessary, he and the first prince would not have visited the Emperor of Ichi repeatedly. This Emperor of One Chi was quite different from the other emperors of the other imperial cities. The Ichi Weapon Alliance had been established for tens of millions of years, and it had interacted with all the forces in the imperial city. The Emperor of Ichi in front of him maintained a good relationship with many of the forces in the imperial city. On top of that, he was adept at building connections. So many forces owed him a huge favor. As long as he was willing to repay the favor he owed him in the past, it wouldn't be difficult for him to find a peak overlord expert from the younger generation. This was an important figure who was comparable to the three conferred kings in terms of power. Unfortunately, they were repeatedly rejected by the sovereign of Qi. Until today, when the ruins of Yu the Great were about to open, he still had an ambiguous attitude. The great prince's eyes shone brightly as he said, "Rare goods are worth hoarding." The emperor understands this deeply. The sovereign of One Qi chuckled lightly and waited for the eldest prince to continue. The emperor refused several times because he wanted to seek better conditions, right? The eldest prince said slowly. The fifth prince frowned and said, "Our conditions are already good enough. The three conferred kings, added together, can't even compare to you. What more do you want?" The power to turn the world around cannot be calculated with 1 plus 1. The first prince waved his hand, interrupting the first prince. He stared at the first Qi sovereign and said, "Tell me what you want." Only then did the sovereign of One Qi reveal a smile. The eldest prince has finally thought it through. What I want is the power to rule the outer regions. The fifth prince was stunned, feeling confused and confused. The eldest prince's expression darkened, revealing a look of deep thought. The Dayu Empire, a 2-star civilization, only has restrictions on its own civilization. However, 3-star civilizations are different. With the approval of the Ecliptic Palace, the tens of millions of civilizations in the vicinity will be brought under the control of the Dayu Empire. From then on, they will be under the jurisdiction of the Dayu Empire. I hope that one day, after the eldest prince ascends to the throne, you will allow us, the Weapon Alliance, to set up businesses in other civilizations. Understanding his intentions, the fifth prince sucked in a breath of cold air. What a big appetite. Doesn't that mean that all the other businesses in the 3-star civilization circle will be uprooted? Is there only your Weapon Alliance? This condition was too great. Not only did it involve the entire artifact forging industry, but it also involved some political issues. If the entire industry was monopolized by the Weapon Alliance, it could be imagined that it would break free from the control of the imperial family and gain unparalleled wealth. How dangerous would it be to have an organization that could rival a country's wealth and could not be controlled? How could they allow others to sleep on their sidebeds? If the Weapon Alliance had any intentions of rebelling in the future, they would definitely be a great threat to the Empire. The fifth prince understood, and his gaze toward the Emperor became even more unfriendly. This person had wild ambitions. If the eldest prince agreed, it would be equivalent to betraying the Empire's interests. The Emperor sipped his tea at a moderate pace, showing no signs of rushing him. Instead, he looked as if he had the eldest prince in his grasp. "Eldest brother, don't bother with this old man. In addition to the experts I've found, you will have over 150 people at your disposal to seize the nation's fortune. Moreover, you are an emperor and are undefeatable. Even if this old man defers to other princes, it's not a big deal. The eldest prince closed his eyes and pondered. After a long while, he exhaled and said slowly, "Fifth brother is right, but this concerns the throne. There can be no mistakes. I agree to this condition." The fifth prince's face was exceptionally pale, but he did not refute. The north-gazing pearl looked at the eldest prince's expression from beginning to end, not saying a word. "Haha, I knew that the eldest prince is a smart person and knows how to choose," the Emperor of Ichi said with a faint smile. He took out a special contract and pushed it toward the eldest prince. "This is a soul contract. Both parties sign it with their souls. If you go against it, your soul will be injured. I don't need to explain the consequences." He was the first to sign his name on it with his soul. The eldest prince hesitated for a moment, and his soul left his body, preparing to sign it. At this moment, the jade pendant at his waist suddenly trembled, and a series of urgent messages jumped out. After a brief look, the Emperor of Ichi's expression changed abruptly, becoming anxious and doubtful. He suddenly pulled back the contract, causing the eldest prince's signature to fail. He frowned. "What do you mean?" The Emperor of Ichi's expression darkened, and he said, "An esteemed guest has come, and his goal is the same as yours. I don't want to offend any of you, so I need you two to discuss it clearly." The fifth prince raised his brows and snorted coldly. "Same goal? Then I'm still a prince? Humph, with my eldest brother here. What right do they have to be on equal footing?" The Emperor of Ichi did not answer, but sent a message to the jade pendant. Before long, the sound of light footsteps could be heard from outside the stone door. The fifth prince laughed coldly. "I want to see which prince it is." Creak! The stone door was pushed open, and a silver-haired, fairy-like handsome, yellow-robed youth walked in with his hands clasped behind his back. The expressions of the three people in the room changed. The north-gazing pearl's eyes were filled with shame and anger, and the eldest prince was slightly surprised. As for the fifth prince, his face was filled with hatred. "Brothers, Miss North-gazing, what a coincidence." Suyu smiled indifferently and sat down without any reservations. He looked at the Emperor of Ichi himself. "I'm indebted to the Emperor for thinking so highly of me, and for being willing to meet me." The Emperor of Ichi smiled like an old man, and said to the shopkeeper, "Bring me the phoenix feather spiritual tea." The expressions of the eldest prince and the fifth prince changed instantly. The phoenix feather spiritual tea was a divine tea unique to the alliance of Ichi. It could only grow if it was watered with molten liquid from various precious materials. Even the royal family could not afford to pay such a high price. Only the alliance of Ichi, which forged divine weapons all year round and had a large amount of molten liquid, could grow such a magical tea. But even so, the alliance of Ichi could only obtain 2 ounces of phoenix feather spiritual tea every year. The Emperor of Ichi had always kept it for himself to drink. The only exception was when Emperor Dongfangxia had personally come to fetch it. The eldest prince and the fifth prince had been there several times, but they had never received such treatment. But who knew that when Suyu came, the Emperor would give him such a high standard of treatment, which really surprised them. Suyu chuckled. "Emperor, you are too kind. Compared to the item you brought, what is a mere phoenix feather spiritual tea?" The Emperor of Ichi said amiably. As he spoke, a pure aura of the golden flames forbidden wood leaked out. There was a newly refined personal magic treasure hanging around his neck. It must have been refined from the golden flames forbidden wood. Their conversation shocked the few people once again. The sixth prince actually had such a relationship with the Emperor of Ichi. The fifth prince's eyes narrowed, and he said in a low voice, "Sixth prince, could it be that you also want to fight for the destiny of a nation? With me around, I advise you to give up on that idea." If the fifth prince had not spoken, Suyu would not have bothered with him. He glanced sideways at the fifth prince and said calmly, "Fifth brother, there is less than half a month left. Have you managed to gather the 50,000 divine stones? If I were you, I would waste my time here. I might as well think of a way to gather the divine stones. Otherwise, it would not be good if you really came to my mansion as a servant." The fifth prince choked, clenching his fists tightly. He could not vent his grief and indignation. He could not gather the 50,000 divine stones. His eldest brother had also lost more than half of his wealth because of that gamble. The rest of his wealth was mostly fixed assets. It would take a month to sell them all off if they were exchanged for divine stones. He had no choice but to lower his head when he was under someone else's roof. The first prince's face was as gloomy as water. He did not say a word and quietly observed the situation. Suyu looked at the two of them, then looked at the north-gazing Pearl and shot her a smile. The north-gazing Pearl gritted her teeth and clenched her fists tightly. The first prince saw this, and his face became even more gloomy. It was quiet. Suyu said to the Emperor of Ichi calmly, "So, how far have you discussed?" The Emperor of Ichi pushed the contract over and said with a hoarse laugh, "I am just a businessman. I have no intention of getting involved in the fight for the throne. I only care about who can offer a higher price." Suyu's heart trembled slightly as he looked at the contract. What great ambition! Moreover, the first prince was willing to agree. For the throne, he was willing to pay any price, even if it meant sacrificing the fundamental interests of the Dayu Empire. After looking, Suyu pushed the contract back. The Emperor of Ichi looked at him with a smile and said calmly, "If you can add the price I want on top of this, I might be able to help you seize the throne." The first prince and the fifth prince frowned. What an insatiably greedy old man. It looked like they had to further cut off the interests of the empire in order to feed this old man. "I am sorry, but I am not interested in such a humiliating thing. I will never agree to it." The Emperor of Ichi's smile froze, and he froze. After a pause, the Emperor of Ichi said, "Sixth Prince, it seems like you have not figured out the current situation." He flicked his finger on the table, and it landed on the contract. Chapter 18:16. Haha. I will also reiterate that I will not agree to the terms of this contract. The Emperor of Ichi's smile faded little by little, and he regained his indifference. "Perhaps I once owed you a favor, but it was only enough for me to help you refine a weapon once. If there's nothing else, Sixth Prince, please go back." His expression was filled with displeasure. Suyu's expression remained unchanged. "Of course, I will not agree to that contract, but I will let you get what you want even more." Crash! The entire room was instantly covered in a dazzling golden light, and the golden light was oppressive. A 10 feet long divine bamboo, surrounded by golden flames, appeared in the stone room. Both the first prince and the fifth prince were stunned. They did not recognize what it was. However, the eyes of the blind Emperor of Ichi seemed to have recovered, bursting with a bright light. Golden flames, forbidden wood. How come it is so big? Compared to the length of his arm last time, this one was more than 1,000 times longer. Wrong. It should be a 10,000-year-old golden flames, forbidden wood. Suyu's tone was calm. There may still be remnants of golden flames, forbidden wood, but I believe only I have more than 10,000-year-old ones. You should understand why. He glanced at the personal treasure on the Emperor's chest and smiled lightly. The Emperor of Ichi was tempted. Indeed, the real golden flames forbidden would had a limited lifespan, and it would often wither in less than 1,000 years. A 10,000-year-old golden flames forbidden wood was rare, and the treasures refined from it were several times more effective than ordinary golden flames forbidden wood. Looking at so many pieces of golden flames forbidden wood, his eyes were full of passion. Only a master craftsman knew the value of this 10 feet long golden flames forbidden wood. It was a priceless treasure. Any piece of treasure refined from it was priceless. The 10 feet long golden flames forbidden wood was enough to refine hundreds of small treasures and reap unimaginable wealth. But after calming down, the light in the Emperor of Ichi's eyes gradually faded, and he sighed reluctantly. "I have to admit that the sixth prince has brought me a rare surprise. But unfortunately, compared with the benefits of this contract, it is insignificant. By controlling all the facial equipment industries in the 3-star civilization region, the huge profits they brought could not be calculated with numbers." Suyu had a calm look on his face as he said indifferently, "Since I've come prepared, I naturally won't shoot without thinking. This piece of golden flames forbidden wood is just a sample. I still have 10,000 pieces of such golden flames forbidden wood in my hands." "Ha!" The Emperor of Qi was shocked. His old body suddenly stood up like a cheetah and knocked over the table in front of him. The precious phoenix feather spirit tea flowed all over the ground, emitting an astonishing divine aura. 10,000. The monarch of unity of Chi's lips trembled, and he couldn't believe his ears. Suyu smiled and shook the Buddha bead bracelet in his hand. One of the Buddha beads lit up. Emperor, you can explore it with your soul. With deep expectations, he sent a wisp of his soul to explore the space of the Buddha bead. What he saw was a complete 10,000-year-old golden flames forbidden wood that hadn't been cut yet. It was 100,000 feet long. Then, the space of the Buddha bead closed, and a pair of deep and calm eyes stared at him quietly. How is it? The monarch of unity of Chi was extremely excited. Even the crafting industry of a 3-star civilization might not be able to obtain something of the same value as such a rare divine item. His heart wavered. Seeing this, the first prince had a bad feeling and said, Emperor, we can discuss the terms again. The monarch of unity of Chi had the idea of raising the price again. He looked at Suyu awkwardly and said, You see. Suyu sneered in his heart. He wouldn't indulge the bad habit of the monarch of unity of Chi. He folded his hands behind his head and leaned back. This is all I have. However, the corners of his mouth curled into a sarcastic smile. Emperor, please consider the risks of both sides. My golden flames forbidden wood is right in front of you, and their promise, is just a promise. Emperor, you have lived for countless years, so you should understand that no matter how binding a contract is, there is a limit, right? The royal family is full of talents. Are you sure that a mere soul contract can force the first prince to bow his head and fulfill his promise? How could the monarch of unity of Chi not know? There were countless rules of the heavenly law, and there were rules that specifically restrained contracts. Even if there were none, if the first prince became the monarch and ordered people to assassinate, kill, or rob the contract, what could the monarch of unity of Chi do? Even if the first prince succeeded in becoming the monarch and really risked universal condemnation to fulfill his promise, are you sure that those civilizations are safe enough? It is no secret that the Corpse Clan has risen and wreaked havoc on the surrounding civilizations. With the power of those civilizations, they may not be able to resist the aggressive Corpse Clan. Suyu sat up and stared straight into the monarch's eyes. Would you rather take such a huge risk than the great harvest that is right in front of you? The monarch of unity of Chi's old body swayed. Indeed, the latter's conditions were tempting, but there were too many unforeseen circumstances, especially the last one, the Corpse Clan. He had heard that the Corpse Clan had gradually appeared in the peripheral civilizations, and some of them had even been occupied by the Corpse Clan. The threat of the Corpse Clan was getting more and more intense, and no one could predict when the civilizations outside the Empire of Dayu would be occupied. He was completely moved by Suyu's words. Of course, the premise was that Suyu could take out something that was not inferior to the benefits of the contract, such as the huge golden flames forbidden wood. The first prince had a bad premonition, and he hurriedly said, Emperor, please do not listen to the sixth prince's side of the story. I can guarantee it with my reputation. The monarch of unity of Chi had already made up his mind. He said, I am indebted to the first prince and the fifth prince for their trust in me. I have visited you many times, but I am afraid that I am unable to shoulder the heavy responsibility entrusted to me by the two princes. Please leave. Send the guests out. He was no longer polite. The stone door opened, and the shopkeeper was waiting outside. The first prince's face was gloomy, and he stared coldly at Suyu. The fifth prince was also gnashing his teeth in hatred. Was Suyu born to oppose them? They were about to succeed, but he had to interfere. Monarch of unity of Chi, I will remember your choice, and I hope you will not regret it in the future. The first prince had said all the nice things he wanted to say. At this moment, there was no room for negotiation, and he threatened the monarch of unity of Chi. The monarch of unity of Chi laughed and said, Farewell, prince. Humph. The first prince and the other two left dejectedly. One could imagine the anger in their hearts. When the stone door was closed again, Suyu waved his hand again, and hundreds of 100 feet long golden flames forbidden wood appeared. He said, "These are the down payment. When you have gathered enough people, you will give me another half. If you help my sister seize the throne, I will give you another half." Haha, of course, of course. Wait, sister, are you recruiting people for Princess Rookin? The monarch of Unity of Chi was stunned. Nodding slightly, Suyu did not deny it. The monarch of Unity of Chi could not understand Suyu's thoughts. He said in surprise, "For Princess Rookin, you are willing to sacrifice such a huge price? To tell you the truth, with the six princes' current reputation, and with my help, you are more than capable of becoming the monarch. Why do you want to work for someone else?" Suyu smiled indifferently. "There is nothing else. It is just a promise." He still felt that it was inconceivable, but if Suyu insisted, he did not mind. No matter who became the emperor, it had nothing to do with him. "In 2 days, I will bring people to the sixth prince's residence." "All right." Suyu left, not specifically instructing the monarch of Unity of Chi to give it his all. Now that he had chosen to oppose the first prince, how could he not give it his all? Otherwise, the day the first prince ascended to the throne would be the day the alliance of Unity of Chi was destroyed. After a busy day, Suyu returned to the sixth prince's residence. Princess Rookin and Emperor Wuhan were waiting eagerly. Seeing that Suyu had returned empty-handed, they had a bad feeling. They were a little disappointed, but their emotions did not fluctuate too much because they had not harbored much hope in the first place. "How is it?" Out of politeness, Emperor Wuhan stepped forward to greet him and asked with concern. Shaking his head, Suyu said, "We will see the results in 2 days." It was still unknown how many people the monarch of Unity of Chi could gather. Before he was confident, he would not be too sure. "Is that so? It's all right, it's all right." Emperor Wuhan laughed bitterly in his heart. How could it be all right? The relic of Du the Great would open in 3 days. What could they do with such a small number of people? Princess Rookin had also lost her usual liveliness. Seeing that Suyu had arrived, she forced herself to perk up. "It's all right, you have done your best. The fight for the nation's destiny has not reached the final moment, and no one can say what the outcome will be. It is good that you have such a mentality," Suyu praised. "You should adjust your mentality. I will return to the residence first." Unexpectedly, just as he was about to leave the princess's residence, a guard on duty reported, "Your Highness, the second prince has come to visit." "What is he doing here?" Princess Rookin was a little surprised. It was the eve of the fight for the nation's destiny, and the second prince, who usually did not visit, had suddenly come to visit. "Invite him in." Suyu stopped in his tracks. Fortunately, he did not leave. Thud, thud. The sound of the second prince's unhurried footsteps could be heard approaching from afar. From afar, he laughed warmly. "How have you been, sister? I heard that you were summoned by the gray-robed emperor alone. I am very envious of you." As he spoke, he suddenly realized that Suyu was present. His expression sank, and he snorted. Ignoring Suyu, he walked up to Princess Rookin. Princess Rookin invited him to sit. After exchanging a few pleasantries, she said impatiently, "Brother, you do not visit me for no reason. If you have something to say, just say it." Sensing that Princess Rookin was not in a good mood, he did not beat around the bush. "Haha, I have come today to give sister a great opportunity." Princess Rookin raised her brows and asked curiously, "Tell me about it." "Haha, a straightforward person does not beat around the bush. Brother, you have learned that sister has secretly recruited more than 20 people to help you seize the nation's destiny. Is that true?" Princess Rookin's expression changed slightly, but she was not too surprised. At this point, everyone's trump cards had been exposed. If they were to investigate it seriously, it would not be a secret. "Yes, does this have anything to do with the great opportunity that second brother spoke of?" "Haha, of course it has something to do with it." The second prince was beaming. "I believe that sister has heard about it. Brother, you have the support of 2 conferred kings. Currently, there are 81 peak overlords of the younger generation helping me seize the nation's destiny. However, compared to eldest brother, they are still lacking. Therefore, I would like to borrow sister's 20 people," the second prince said. Since it is only 20 people, sister will not be able to obtain the position of crown prince. Why don't you cede them to me? If I successfully obtain the position of crown prince, I can promise that on the day I ascend the throne, I will bestow sister with 2 fiefdoms of the same size. How about that? Chapter 1817. They had put in so much effort. How could they allow someone else to take advantage of them? Emperor Wu Hin said bluntly, "If this is the reason, I think the second prince has come for nothing. Every battle for the throne is full of variables. Until the very last moment, even the first prince, who has the absolute advantage, would not dare say he has a 100% chance of success." The rejection was obvious. They would not give up just like that. Haha, indeed. Before the final result is known, I would not dare to presume who will succeed in the end. But what I can be sure of is that my sister will definitely be among the losers. To be honest, the strength of your 20-odd people is not enough. The second prince went straight to the point. Princess Rookin's face fell. She said unhappily, "You don't have to worry about that, second brother." The second prince continued, "Sister, you should consider this carefully. If you give up your position to me now, you will still have the merit of attaining the throne. It will be beneficial to you in the future. If you refuse, you will gain nothing, as you have no hope of becoming the crown prince. The only way out for you is to rely on one of the princes." The battle for the throne of the Eastern royal family has always been extremely cruel. When it came to father's bloodline, he did not have any siblings. It goes without saying where they went. After father ascended to the throne, he either killed them or exiled them. In short, he wiped them out completely. Not a single one was left. Sister, you had better consider your future carefully. Do you want to be killed or be a happy and carefree king? Emperor Wu Hin let out a cold grunt. If we have to rely on a prince, why should we rely on you? No matter how you look at it, the first prince has more of an advantage than you. If they really had no other choice, the first prince would be at a lower risk than the second prince. The first prince has the right time, the right place, and the right people. Do you think he needs the support of your measly 20 people? Even if you give it to him, when he ascends to the throne in the future, how much leverage can you have? His words had hit Princess Rookin where it hurt. Indeed, the first prince was like the sun in the sky. He did not care about his meager support. The 2 women sank into a deep silence. I will not force you. Give me an answer before the ruins of Dayu the Great. If not, we will be enemies the next time we meet in the ruins. Farewell, the second prince said arrogantly. He held his head high and left the princess manor. After witnessing the whole process, Suyu finally understood why Princess Rookin also wanted to fight for the position of crown prince. She may not be greedy for power, but if she does not strive for the position of crown prince, what awaits her in the future is an extremely tragic ending. The second prince, who is usually very gentle to her, was cold and heartless in the face of danger. This was enough to explain everything. And Princess Rookin glared at the second prince as he left. Then, she let out a whimper and threw herself into Sovereign Wuhan's arms, crying like a little girl who had been bullied. I must become the crown prince. Otherwise, however, there was a trace of strange emotion in her determination. Sovereign Wu Hin had a complicated look on his face. He patted her back and comforted her. To be honest, based on Su Yu's experience, Princess Rookin's temperament was not suitable to be the ruler of a country. Willful, weak, and lacking foresight, it would be difficult for one to achieve great things. However, if she were to ascend to the throne, she believed that she would be the only one among her siblings who would not go on a killing spree. If I receive a favor from someone, I must repay them tenfold, Su Yu said inwardly. He still persisted in his beliefs. Regardless of the fate of the Dayu Empire, he would fulfill his promise and fully support Princess Rookin. After bidding farewell to the two girls, Su Yu returned to the mansion. The lights in the mansion were dim. Because it was a newly built mansion, the palace maids and servants were left to choose from. Hence, it was rather desolate and lonely. Sitting alone in the courtyard, Su Yu looked at the moon from afar. He could not help but feel a sense of loss. Where was Xia Jingyu? He had caught a glimpse of the ancient dream altar before it disappeared. Ever since they met, Xia Jingyu had always been like a ball of hazy fog, a moon in the water. They would meet each other for a short time, and then be separated for a long time. Suyu kept chasing and searching for her, over and over again. There seemed to be an invisible barrier between them that could not be crossed. Was it fate? Looking at the bright moon, Suyu had an indistinct feeling. In the invisible world, there was an invisible giant hand obstructing them. That feeling was very much like the calamity that had befallen Suyu from behind the scenes, trying to kill him. Deep in his thoughts, he sank into a trance, until a servant girl held a cup of hot tea and called out softly, "Sixth Prince, the tea is here." For the past few days, Suyu had not trained. He had been drinking tea alone under the moon in the back garden. The servants had gotten used to it and served him tea on time. Suyu came back to his senses and picked up the teacup with a sense of loss. "You may leave." "Yes." He took a sip. The tea was rich and fragrant. But suddenly he frowned. Gradually, a pained expression appeared on his face. Drops of blood and sweat seeped out of his pores. "There's poison in the tea? Who is it?" Suyu's pupils quickly lost focus and were covered with a layer of gray. In the darkness, he could vaguely see an exceptionally tall palace maid approaching him. It was the one who had served him tea. The palace maid had ordinary features, but there was something special about her. Below her right eye, there was a mole that looked like a teardrop. Suddenly, Suyu remembered a person. The white-robed woman who had placed a bounty on Suyu in the Diyu Empire was also a pinnacle existence. The woman's most striking feature was her teardrop mole. Suyu remembered her name clearly. Xiao Henlei. How is it? The spirit tea made by Wuhan Lei tastes good, doesn't it? Xiao Henlei squatted down, quietly watching as Suyu gradually turned into a puddle of blood. Suyu groaned in pain. Who sent you? Xiao Henlei's lips curled into a cold smile. No one sent me. I was the one who wanted to kill you. Strange. Suyu had thought that it was an assassin sent by the first and second princes. How heavily guarded was the imperial palace? There were sovereigns in gray robes, as well as several sovereigns in crowns. There were also countless powerful formations. The probability of passing through the imperial palace undetected was 0. Only with the help of the two princes could an assassin infiltrate the sixth prince's mansion. Most importantly, the two of them had a reason to kill Suyu. But I did help you get rid of an assassin hiding in the dark. Xiao Henlei waved her hand and threw out a corpse from her storage space. The corpse's flesh was festering, and it did not look human. Its body contained a primordial power. It was an emperor. He was the assassin sent by the first prince. But even though they were both emperors, he had been killed by Xiao Henlei without attracting any attention. This woman's level of danger was obvious. If he attacked, he would inevitably cause a commotion. To ensure that nothing went wrong, I had to get rid of him first. Suyu's face sank. Why did you want to kill me? He asked with difficulty. The poison had corroded his body, and his throat was beginning to soften. His words were indistinct. Of course, for revenge. You killed someone you shouldn't have. Who? Why did you make it onto the Huang contribution roll? The other party asked coldly. It was Xielang. He was my disciple. My real name is Luo Xinlei. You are a member of the royal family. I believe you must have heard of me. Hearing this, Suyu's heart shook. The most wanted criminal on the wanted list, Luo Xinlei. It was actually this vicious person. Suyu did not know what crime she had committed, but for her to be listed as the most wanted criminal, it was enough to imagine how dangerous she was. Back then, he had accidentally obtained Xielang's head. He had not expected to provoke this vicious person. Luo Xinlei smiled coldly. You can die in peace. No one can live after being poisoned by my Luotian poison. After saying this, she walked away slowly, leaving Suyu and the decaying corpse of the emperor behind. I'm afraid things won't go as you wish. However, there was a strange movement behind her. Before she could react, a dragon-shaped sword energy, which was close to the emperor, cleverly slashed towards the vital parts of her back. Luo Xinlei's expression changed, and she hurriedly summoned a cloud of mist in front of her. The dragon-shaped sword energy broke into the mist like a clay ox entering the sea. But with a soft groan, Luo Xinlei's figure fell out, her chest a dark red. Looking at Su Yu, she was a little surprised. At this moment, Su Yu's body was bursting with amazing vitality. The emerald light shone brightly, and the festering body quickly recovered to its original state. A cloud of pitch-black mist was slowly forced out from his palm. You weren't poisoned? Luo Xinlei was shocked. When a Luotian poison entered his body, it immediately spread to his limbs and bones. Even the Double Crown Emperor would find it difficult to force the spreading poison out of his body, unless he did not drink the tea from the beginning, and he was just affected by the poison. Divine energy emerged from Su Yu's 5 fingers, wrapping around the Luotian poison. I searched your palace maid's soul and served tea according to her habits. How did you see through it? Luo Xinlei asked in a low voice. Su Yu said, the tea is cold. He had always been meticulous, and he noticed that something was wrong the moment he drank the tea. The tea served by the palace maid was served immediately after it was brewed, and it was slightly hot. But this cup was a little cold, and it had obviously been left for a while. His palace maids would never serve such a tea. Therefore, he immediately wrapped the tea in his mouth with his divine qi. Even so, the steaming poisonous gas was still tormenting him. Fortunately, he had mastered 40% of the law of life, and he was able to counteract the poison with his strong vitality. Just a trace of the poison was so powerful. If all the poison in the tea entered his body, it could be imagined that even the Double Crown Emperor might not be able to withstand it. Luo Xinlei sighed with regret. So that's how it is. There's always a mistake. I can only kill you by force. Anyway, Su Yu's sword had already caused a commotion, and she no longer cared. But suddenly, a beautiful woman in a palace dress appeared beside Su Yu. It was Emperor Wuhan, who had heard the news and rushed over. She stared at Luo Xinlei, and her eyes suddenly became cold. How dare you come to the palace? Luo Xinlei crossed her arms in front of her chest, showing a pitiful sneer. Oh, isn't this the sister-in-law of Princess Xiaoyan? You have been living quite comfortably all these years. Thanks to you, I have been alone all these years, and I have been living very well. Emperor Wuhan's words were filled with unforgettable hatred. It was as if there was an irreconcilable hatred between her and Luo Xinlei. Chapter 1818. After saying that, she leapt into the air and grabbed the emperor's corpse on the ground. Now that Emperor Wuhan had been alerted, it would be very difficult to kill him without alerting anyone. It would be bad if the battle drew out the gray-robed emperor. Therefore, she wisely chose to retreat. You want to leave? The formation around Emperor Wuhan shone brightly, and a bolt of purple-black divine thunder descended from the sky, bombarding Luo Xinlei. Purple sky, thunder formation. Luo Xinlei was slightly shocked. She gave up on grabbing the corpse and dodged the attack. A hint of annoyance appeared between her brows. Very well, you really haven't been idle all these years in order to kill me. You found a divine thunder that can restrain me. She looked at the corpse on the ground reluctantly and had to teleport away. If she stayed any longer, she would definitely attract the gray-robed emperor. Where do you think you're going? Emperor Wuhan was filled with murderous intent as he teleported away. Su Yu hesitated for a moment but did not give chase. With Luo Xinlei's strength, he would only be a burden to Emperor Wuhan if he went. Looking at the emperor's corpse on the ground, his eyes were filled with confusion. Strange. Why does she keep the emperor's corpse? Is his corpse very important? Su Yu squatted down to examine it. The corpse's storage device had been taken, and only the corpse was left. After thinking for a moment, Su Yu put the corpse away. Then he walked up to the cup of tea and drew out a drop of colorless, odorless liquid. Luotian poison? I didn't notice it at all just now, and it's so powerful. I can use it. He wrapped it with his divine power and sealed it in a jade bottle. Then, he searched around and found the corpse of the dead palace maid in a remote corner. With a touch of his palm, the palace maid's injuries healed, and her lost vitality and soul miraculously reappeared. Soon, the palace maid blinked and came back to life. How did I fall asleep? Sixth Prince, please spare my life. I know I was wrong. I will be punished. She had been implicated by Suyu after all, so it was not a big deal to resurrect her. It's fine. Go about your business. Thank you for your mercy, sixth prince. Luo Xinlei, the first prince. Suyu clenched his fist. He was not strong enough now, but if he was strong enough, he would make them pay. An hour later, Emperor Wuhan returned with a livid face. You lost him? Yes, he escaped into the earth vein. I don't know where he went. Another earth vein? So you could not help but recall Huan Yu Longjuan's memories. The entire underground of the palace was filled with complicated, dried-up earth veins. However, it was also good that she didn't catch up to him. Luo Xinlei's strength was extremely high, and it was only because she feared the strength of the royal palace that she chose not to fight. If she really left the territory of the royal palace, Emperor Wuhan would be in danger instead. How did you provoke her? Emperor Wuhan stared at Suyu with a burning gaze. His gaze was exceptionally sharp. There was nothing to hide about this matter, so he told the whole story in full detail. So that's how it is. Sovereign Wuhan suddenly let out a sharp laugh. Well done. So Evil Wolf is her disciple as well. Hearing the hatred in her voice, Suyu could not help but express the confusion in his heart. Who is she? The Imperial Palace is such a heavily guarded place, yet she could easily sneak into my mansion? Emperor Wuhan stared at Suyu and said coldly, She is more familiar with the Imperial Palace than I am. Traveling freely through the palace is a piece of cake for her. Huh? Could it be that she used to be someone from the palace? You probably don't know, but just now you fought with the eldest princess of our empire, right? Emperor Wuhan said softly. What? The eldest princess? The most wanted criminal on the list? So you could not relate the two's identities together. She is the elder sister of the monarch Dongfang Xia, Dongfang Luoshan. When Dongfang Xia ascended to the throne, he killed all the princes except for this elder sister, who was expelled from the Diyu Empire by Dongfang Xia's benevolence. But no one would have guessed that she was so ambitious. Not only did she not go far away, but she also stayed in hiding and schemed against Dongfang Xia and his bloodline. She cultivated and created a series of despicable plans against the royal family. Huan Yue Longjuan's abduction of a concubine was one of the most sensational incidents. Emperor Wuhan's eyes were cold. Rumor has it that he escaped from the three emperors with ease. But what about the reality? Without the cooperation of a powerful mastermind behind the scenes, how could he, a mere half-step emperor, escape? Now that he thought about it carefully, there were many suspicious points. What about the three emperors who guarded the imperial palace all year round? What about Dongfang Xia himself? Why was there no movement at all? The truth is that Dongfang Xia and the three emperors were suddenly entangled. The three emperors were also blocked by a mysterious strong martial artist, which allowed Huan Yue Langjun to escape. It was obvious who the mastermind behind the scenes was. Now that the emperor and the two emperors have left the imperial palace, that bitch took the opportunity to come again. However, Emperor Wuhan laughed heartily. She was willing to pay any price to break into the imperial palace to kill you for Xiaolang. That Xiaolang must be very important to her. You killed him well. Xiaolang's crime on the list was that he had raped and killed one of Dongfang Xia's daughters. That was also a deliberate act of revenge against the royal family. He did not expect to accidentally kill two of Luo Xinlei's people. Of course, he did not personally kill Xiaolang. It was the work of the north-facing pearl. It's just a feud between a sister and a brother. Yet he wants to implicate his concubine and daughter. Although the royal family is heartless, isn't this person's methods a little too cruel? Do you think that only the concubine and daughter were harmed? Emperor Wuhan laughed bitterly. Even those who are related to the royal family cannot escape her methods. My husband, the current emperor's uncle, and Rukin's mother, imperial concubine Xiao Yun, both died tragically at her hands. She was Princess Rukin's aunt, so the ones who died were Princess Rukin's uncle and mother. It was no wonder that she hated Luo Xinlei so much, and it was no wonder that Princess Rukin would personally assassinate Huan Yue Langjun. They were all filled with hatred for Luo Xinlei's people. Does that mean that she has other subordinates? Emperor Wuhan laughed coldly. Not just other subordinates. Do you know why the wanted list was created? Suyu's heart skipped a beat. It was set up specifically for that be asterisk TCH. She and her followers are wanted everywhere and no end. Right now, more than half of the criminals on the wanted list are her followers. Isn't this woman's power a little unusual? How could a princess who had lost her power silently cultivate so many powerhouses? The most suspicious thing was the matter of Huan Yue Langjun. She couldn't have entangled Dongfang Xia and the three double crown emperors alone. Could she? She has accomplices? So you asked. Emperor Wu Han nodded slightly, his expression frighteningly dark. After this woman was banished, she found a mysterious backer who allowed her to stir up trouble for many years. Otherwise, how could a fallen princess like her have such great abilities? For so many years, the Empire has been tracking down the mysterious force that secretly supported her, but there has been no news. The mysterious force is hidden very well and is difficult to discover. After saying this, Emperor Wuhan comforted him. But don't worry. Since she failed once, she won't come again for a while. Don't worry too much. He wasn't worried. If he couldn't beat her, he could easily escape. This matter involves the royal family scandal. Just keep it to yourself, but remember not to spread it. If it hadn't happened today, Suyu would never have known that the royal family had such a crazy opponent. Understand. Emperor Wuhan returned to the princess mansion and briefly told her what had happened just now. Hearing the appearance of Wenluo, divine tears, Princess Rukin suddenly clenched her fists. The usually muddle-headed Princess Rukin's eyes were filled with unforgettable hatred. It's her. This woman killed my mother and uncle, and she still dares to return to the palace. Unknowingly, her nails dug into her flesh. Her eyes were filled with hatred and tears of grief. If I could become the monarch, I would gather the power of the whole nation to annihilate her. But why? Why am I so useless? Forget about the position of the crown prince. I might not even be able to keep my life in the future. It's impossible for me to avenge my mother and uncle. Emperor Wuhan also unwittingly shed bitter tears. One was an orphan girl, and the other was a widow. They had helped each other in difficult times. It was because they had a common enemy that they had to participate in the intrigue of the royal family and the cruel and bloody fight for the position of crown prince. Unfortunately, things didn't go according to their wishes. The chances of winning the position of crown prince this time were slim, unless a miracle happened. 2 days later, before the ruins of the Great Yu, the imperial clan court was busy handing out tokens to the princes and princesses. That was the proof to allow them to enter the ruins of the Great Yu. The princes and princesses finally publicly summoned their advisors to their residences, ready to set off. There were only 15 people in Princess Rukin's residence, 7 or 8 fewer than the previous time. Where are they? Princess Rukin raised her brows and asked. A young man, close to 30 years old, said angrily, "Your Highness, the curly-bearded scholar and his 7 colleagues suddenly left without saying goodbye last night. We don't know where they went. We sent people to search for them, but to no avail." Emperor Wuhan's face darkened. Did they desert? At this moment, the difference in power between the princes and princesses was no longer secret. Princess Rukin was too weak. She was at an extremely disadvantageous position in the fight for the nation's fortune. It was only a matter of time before they betrayed her. Princess Rukin was so angry that she trembled. A bunch of treacherous bastards. I'll issue a warrant for their arrest and make them pay the price. They had signed a contract. Princess Rukin would help them endure the Dao reign, and they would help her seize the nation's fortune. If they broke the contract, they would have to compensate Princess Rukin at least 10,000 divine stones. To them, that was almost their entire fortune. Haha, why are you so angry, royal sister? The second prince's laughter came from outside the residence. Then the guards at the door yelled in shock, followed by the sounds of fighting. The second prince led a group of people and barged into the princess residence. He was all smiles. "Second royal brother, how dare you barge into my residence? I'm going to report this to the imperial clan court." Princess Rukin's pupils contracted suddenly. She fixed her gaze on the group of people surrounding the second prince, her eyes spewing fire. The curly-bearded scholar one-armed iron sword, the prodigal son who has turned back. Why are you with him? The curly-bearded scholar was dressed in green, scholarly attire. He had a refined air about him. He chuckled. A fine bird chooses a tree to nest in. A wise man submits to circumstances. We are unwilling to be covered in dust and remain unknown under the princess's command. Hence, we've decided to join the second prince. The matter was clear. Chapter 1819. Pearls covered in dust. Are you traitors worthy? Princess Rookin was furious. She immediately went to her old master to demonstrate her power after submitting to her new master. If one were to talk about being ungrateful, then this was a living example. The curly-bearded scholar smiled happily. Regardless of whether your highness agrees or not, following his highness the second prince is obviously better than following you. For the sake of our friendship, let's cancel the contract we signed in the past. Dream on. The bearded scholar shook his head. Your highness misunderstands. I'm not making a request. I am merely informing you. Princess Rookin laughed in anger. Do you really think my title as a princess is undeserved? You have violated the contract. You must immediately return the divine stones. Otherwise, I will immediately send you to prison. She was extremely furious. Anyone who was bitten by their own dog would not be happy. Your highness is naturally not undeserved, but that is only for today. Tomorrow, after the ruins of you the Great, your highness will be nothing. The bearded scholar laughed recklessly. No matter who became the crown prince, there would be no place for the princess. Banishing her from the Diyu dynasty would be the lightest punishment. What would be the use of her arrest warrant then? Emperor Wu Hen sighed. They had indeed dared to come because they had something to rely on. Anger and sorrow flashed through her eyes. The sorrow of the weak was that anyone could step on them in times of danger, even those who had once respected them as gods. I will kill you. Princess Rookin was so angry that her eyes turned red and tears flowed out. She only wanted to avoid being slaughtered by the royal family. She only wanted to take revenge for her deceased mother and uncle. Why did everyone come to bully her? Forget about the second brother. Even an insignificant person who had once controlled her life and death had humiliated her. The second prince waved his fan and said calmly, Sister, they are my people now. You have to ask me before you kill them. As he waved his fan, silver needles flew out and circled around her. His determination was evident, as if he wanted to fight at all costs. Emperor Wu Hen mourned silently. One wrong move, and they had lost the entire game. They had misjudged the intensity of the fight for the throne, causing them to be severely unprepared. Princess Rookin slowly closed her eyes. Her long eyelashes trembled slightly as she took a few deep breaths. Only then did her heaving chest slowly calm down. With a trembling but firm voice, she said, Did you come here today to see me make a fool of myself? Hee. You were destined to become a joke after you rejected me last time. Your brother couldn't be bothered to look at it, nor did he care to look at it. The second prince closed his folding fan and slapped it against his palm. He looked mockingly at the remaining 15 people behind her. I will also give you a chance to choose. The building is about to collapse, and the ship is capsized. Where will you go? If you're willing to follow me, come forward. I'll guarantee your safety. If you're unwilling, you'll be my #1 enemy in the ruins of you the Great. Eliminating you will be my #1 priority. The real purpose of his trip was to poach the remaining 15 people. Princess Rookin's eyes widened as she shouted hysterically, How dare you? The second prince ignored him as if he hadn't heard anything. He just stared at the remaining 15 people without blinking. You only have 10 breaths of time. 1. Whoosh! At the very beginning, one person left the group and arrived behind the second prince in a flash. He lowered his head, not daring to meet Princess Rookin's eyes. The second prince's lips curled up, filled with charm and threat. He said, 2. The first person's betrayal was like a meteor crashing to the ground, dealing a devastating blow to the remaining 15 people. People left the group one after another, standing behind the second prince. Seeing this, Princess Rookin was powerless to stop them. Their hearts were theirs. It was useless to force them to stay. She closed her beautiful eyes with difficulty and tears fell like rain. She said in a trembling voice, "If you're willing to leave, then leave." The moment she said that, the last few people who insisted on leaving also wavered. After a dozen people left, there were only two people left behind Princess Rookin. One of them was Yi Lang, and the other was Yi He. They were wandering brothers that Princess Rookin had taken in many years ago. "Are the two of you sure?" The second prince was overjoyed. He shot a hostile gaze at the two remaining people. Yi Lang and Yi He had determined expressions. They stood behind Princess Rookin like withered trees, unwavering. "He, remember the two of them." The second prince squeezed the folding fan in his hand, not hiding his cold expression. "Enter the ruins of Yu the Great. If you find the two of them, kill them without mercy." The curly-bearded scholar smiled sinisterly. "I will treat the two loyal dogs well later." The fight for the position of crown prince had ended before it had even begun. Princess Rookin's tears fell like rain. What she received was not the second prince's sympathy or pity, but deep mockery. At that moment, a palace maid hurried over, saying in fear and trepidation, "Your Highness, the sixth prince has arrived." Princess Rookin let out a bitter laugh. What was the point of him coming? Everything was meaningless. "Tell him to return," Princess Rookin said, completely disheartened. "I have troubled him during this period of time." Emperor Wuhin wanted to stop her, but he withdrew his hand in midair. The situation was already hopeless. It was no longer important whether Su Yu was here or not. The palace maid ran over to report. Sister, why did you do this in the first place? If you had agreed to lend the people to me, I would have owed you a favor. Now, you have nothing." The second prince was in high spirits. He clasped his hands behind his back, coldly mocking. One must know one's limitations. If one sets an unrealistic goal, one will miss the most suitable opportunity. Remember this, sister. He had gotten what he wanted, and he was satisfied. Unexpectedly, the sixth prince, Su Yu, walked over with his hands behind his back. Seeing the situation in the courtyard from afar, he frowned slightly. "Sister, what is the meaning of the palace maid's message?" Princess Rookin did not look at him. To be precise, her dull and listless eyes could not see anyone. "I have no one else to use. Sixth brother, you need not worry about the fight for the nation's fate." Princess Rookin smiled sadly. Su Yu's gaze swept past the second prince, then the familiar faces behind him. He roughly understood what had happened. His brows relaxed, and he walked over to rub her head. "I was wondering what it was. So there are 20 people missing." Princess Rookin was at her lowest point in life. She could not help but throw herself into his arms, crying loudly. 20 people are all I have. I have nothing now." Su Yu really felt like a younger sister to this sometimes muddle-headed little princess. Hearing this, he laughed. "Have you forgotten that I said I would find help for you?" Emperor Wuhin's eyes flashed, and he revealed a shocked expression. A few days ago, Su Yu had gone out on a trip, saying that he was looking for help. However, there was no definite news, and he had thought that he had returned in failure. Princess Rookin lifted her head abruptly, her eyes filled with a strange glow. She said in shock, "Really? How much help did you find?" Her heart was filled with anticipation, and she looked at Su Yu without blinking. Her heart had stopped beating. The second prince's expression turned serious. What kind of help was it? 1. Su Yu had only found a divine warrior. Princess Rookin's crystalline eyes quickly dimmed. She looked like she was crying and laughing at the same time. 1. You have done your best. Thank you, Brother Su Yu. At the critical juncture of her life, at least there was someone who had not abandoned her. Emperor Wuhin let out a deep sigh. The hope in her heart was immediately extinguished. She laughed self-mockingly. Now that things had come to this, who would still be willing to board their sinking ship? The second prince felt relieved and laughed. Sixth brother, you're really good at surprising people. Unfortunately, this is probably the last time. After the ruins of Yu the Great, you'll have to say goodbye to the dynasty. Su Yu ignored his words, as well as his people. Without waiting for him to finish, Su Yu laughed and wiped away Princess Rookin's tears. It is true that I only found one help, but he used his connections to find some people. Although not many, it is better than nothing. Buzz, Princess Rookin trembled lightly in his arms. Her chest rose and fell violently like waves, each higher than the last, pressing down on Suyu. The soft and warm pressure caused Suyu to push her away in embarrassment. Emperor Wuhin's pupils shrank, and his body trembled violently. He said in shock, "Where are they?" "Outside the manor." Suyu called out, "Elder, please come in and talk." "Haha, thanks to the Sixth Prince, this is the first time I have seen the splendor of the imperial palace." A loud, powerful voice came from outside the manor. Divine light suddenly appeared in front of Suyu, and a blind, emaciated old man appeared. Prince Wuhin was the first to see the man clearly. His expression changed drastically, and he shouted in shock, "The Emperor of Ichi! It's you!" In terms of the deep roots of the emperors among the people, the rest of them combined could not compare to the Emperor of Ichi. She had visited him as early as 3 years ago, trying to persuade him to support Princess Rookin. But this old man knew her value better than anyone else, and it was extremely difficult to convince him. The last time he visited, he had grown tired of her persuasion and had directly asked her to leave, causing Emperor Wuhin to lose all face. She had never dreamed that after 3 years of fruitless persuasion, he would be persuaded by Suyu in one go. The Emperor of Ichi glanced at him and ignored him. Instead, he stepped forward and cupped his fists at Suyu. This was the attitude of an equal. "Your Highness, I have brought them here. Do you want to inspect them?" Suyu looked at Princess Rookin and Emperor Wuhin and said, "Let them come in and let them inspect them." The old man nodded, and the Emperor of Ichi said calmly, "Come in." Thump, thump. It was as if there was an earthquake, and the tea on the stone table in the courtyard rippled. A large group of young, strong men of different races, dressed in the same dark purple armor, surged into Rookin's manor like an army entering city. If not for the presence of the two emperors, Princess Rookin would have thought that there was a mutiny. Taking a closer look at the newcomers, apart from the fact that they were all young and wearing the same armor, all of their cultivations were at the peak of the overlord level. There were more than 130 of them. Looking at the shocking scene, Emperor Wuhin and Princess Rookin were both overjoyed. The Emperor of Ichi said regretfully, "Your Highness, you came late and gave me only 2 days to prepare. In my haste, I could only gather this group. If it had been a year and a half earlier, I could have easily invited 200 of them." Half of what he said was true, and the other half was modesty. He had long planned to serve an emperor, so how could he not have prepared the people in advance? However, he did not expect that the person he would choose to serve would be Princess Rookin, who was the least favored. If he had known this would happen, he would have used his connections to gather another 70 or 80 people who met the requirements. It would not have been difficult at all. Chapter 1820. It's not a small number. It's not a small number at all. Princess Rookin had already wiped away her tears. Her eyes were like luminous pearls, shining with a dazzling light of surprise. 130 people, and all of them are peak overlords. Although their numbers are slightly less than eldest brothers, their quality is definitely superior. There were quite a few glazed crystal overlords in the opponent's camp. Overall, the two were equally matched. Emperor Wuhin was so excited that he almost burst into tears. The heavens had taken pity on him to receive such powerful support. Compared to the initial 20 weak people, the number had increased by 7 to 8 times, and they were almost on par with the eldest prince. He looked at the Emperor of Wenqi gratefully and said incoherently, "It's enough. It's completely enough. Emperor of Wenqi, I, Wuhin, will remember this great favor." However, the Emperor of Wenqi did not care about the two of them at all, not even bothering to acknowledge them. He blushed, embarrassed by Suyu's words. He cupped his fists and apologized. "I really wasn't prepared. It was Princess Rookin who would be assisting me. Please forgive me, Your Highness." Suyu frowned. "How could it be as easy as you make it sound? I thought the Emperor was a calm person, so I didn't warn you. I didn't expect you to be so careless and not give it your all." Princess Rukin and Emperor Wuhan were so worried that they wanted to cover Su Yu's mouth immediately. That's enough. Don't say any more. They couldn't ask for such a powerful support from the Emperor of One Qi. What if the other party got angry and left in a fit of anger by criticizing and grumbling in front of everyone? Unexpectedly, the Emperor of One Qi, who had been indifferent to them, seemed to have a completely different attitude towards Su Yu. He bowed again and said apologetically, "Your Highness, you have wronged me. I also realized that there were not enough people, so I specially took out the purple demon armor from the storage and equipped everyone." Princess Rukin was shocked again. Staring at the purple-black armor on them, she said in shock, "Is that the rumored number 1 divine armor of the Empire of Dayu? The purple demon armor? I heard that after wearing it, it can greatly increase the wearer's speed of absorbing divine energy and physical strength. It can increase one's cultivation by more than half. The market price of this armor is 20,000 divine stones, and it has never been sold before." Emperor Wu Han was shocked as well. Then he was overjoyed. She had heard of the famous purple demon armor before. It was a supreme-grade armor forged by the One Qi Weapon Alliance to arm its own members. When a peak overlord wore it, their battle prowess would be on par with a half-step martial emperor. 10 purple demon armored warriors working together could easily kill a half-step monarch. Even if they encountered an emperor, a team of more than 50 people would be able to kill it. As for the 130 purple demon armored warriors, they were like a mudslide. Anyone who stood in their way would die, and even monarchs would flee at the mere sight of them. Upon hearing Princess Rukin's introduction, Su Yu was slightly surprised. "Oh, is the purple demon armor that powerful?" The sovereign of Qi heaved a sigh of relief and smiled apologetically. "This old man's life and future are on the line here. How could I dare to hold back?" Su Yu's brows relaxed, and he nodded. "I will trust you for now, but if anything goes wrong, you know the consequences. The subsequent golden flames forbidden would all be ruined. Don't worry, they have all received my instructions and will definitely do their best." The sovereign of Qi cupped his fists once again. "I will go back and wait for the good news, Your Highness. When the time comes, let's drink to our heart's content." Su Yu nodded slightly and watched as the sovereign of Qi teleported away. Princess Rukin's eyes were sparkling, and her face was full of joy. She could not stop smiling. It was only when the sovereign of Qi had left that she suddenly threw herself into Su Yu's arms. She held his face and kissed him to her heart's content. Her small face was overflowing with sincere gratitude and excitement from the bottom of her heart. When she realized that something was amiss, she hurriedly retracted her body, and her snow-white face abruptly blushed. Outsiders might not think much of it, but she knew very well that they were not real siblings. Emperor Wuhan was also full of joy, and his half-smiling eyes darted back and forth between the two of them. She was filled with boundless gratitude towards Su Yu. Without him, there would be no hope of today. How arrogant was the sovereign of Qi! From the beginning to the end, he had not spoken a single word to her or Princess Rukin, and he had not even looked them in the eye. He had only done so because of Su Yu. Even though she was very curious about how Su Yu had convinced the sovereign of Qi, she feigned ignorance out of respect and gratitude. "Your Highness, there is something that I do not know if it is appropriate to ask." Staring at Su Yu, Emperor Wuhan's heart was filled with complicated emotions. Su Yu looked over and said calmly, "Please speak." After a slight hesitation, Emperor Wuhan said, "The sovereign of Qi only recognizes your Highness alone. Why would your Highness still help us, a pair of orphans?" The sovereign of Qi had asked this question before. Su Yu smiled slightly and said calmly, "There is no other reason. It was just a promise. You have done me a favor, and I will definitely repay it." Repaying favors was Su Yu's code of conduct, and there were no exceptions. The two women were stunned, and the way they looked at Su Yu changed completely. They had been more or less guarded against Su Yu before, but now that they were in trouble, they could clearly see Su Yu's character. They admired him and felt fortunate. Fortunate that they had met Su Yu, and fortunate that they had worked hard to fulfill their promise. The expression of the second prince, who had witnessed everything, changed from shock to shock, and finally to ashen. He had never imagined that Suyu could find such powerful reinforcements. He had never imagined that a salted fish like Princess Rookin could make a comeback. What he regretted was that he was the one who had beaten Princess Rookin into a salted fish. If he had known that the sixth prince could recruit such powerful reinforcements, he would not have provoked Princess Rookin for the sake of a mere 20 people. Now she must hate him to the core, right? As he pondered, he slowly retreated, leaving the princess's manor dejectedly. Hee, second imperial brother, where are you going? Princess Ruchun asked with a smile. The second prince stopped in his tracks and forced a smile. They're guests from my sister's manor. I will not stay any longer. Farewell. You can leave, and I cannot stop you. But as for them, did they break the contract? Betray? Fine, 10,000 divine stones for each of them. If they can't pay up, I'm sorry, but you will have to spend 100 years in the Empire's prison. Princess Rookin raised her eyebrows and said with a murderous aura. The second prince's expression kept changing, and he said in a low voice, Sister, aren't you making things difficult for us? If he kept them, where would his prestige be? Would the more than 80 people he had recruited still be loyal to him? It is only right and proper to repay a debt. You have received my blessing, but you want to leave? Do you really think I am a pushover? Princess Rookin said this with a lack of confidence. She involuntarily grabbed Suyu's arm, feeling reassured. The second prince's expression turned cold, and he shouted, Do not be afraid of her. She may not be able to seize the position of crown prince. Follow me. The greatest hope was still the first prince. Princess Rookin's fate was most likely death or banishment. Princess Rookin let out a cold laugh. Let's see who dares to leave. At once, a group of traitors could not move like wooden stakes. Only half of them clenched their teeth and followed the second prince, hoping to get lucky. Princess Rookin's gaze turned cold, but she could not stop them. Suyu looked on coldly from the side, calmly saying, Everyone listen up. Remember those traitors who followed the second prince. Tomorrow, at the relic of the Dayu, kill every person you see. You will get 5,000 divine stones for each person you kill. An ordinary peak overlord would not even get 1,000 divine stones in a year. 5,000 divine stones was a full 5 years' worth of harvest. And the method was simple. Kill a person. They were already mentally prepared to kill people at the relic of the Dayu, but to receive such a huge reward for killing people, forgive their poor imagination, they had never imagined it. In an instant, hundreds of pairs of burning eyes stared fixedly at the dozen or so traitors behind the second prince. His gaze was like that of a starving tiger staring at white sheep, wishing that he could rush over and eat them alive. Creak! The dozen traitors behind the second prince could not move an inch. They turned around with stiff expressions, meeting the ferocious gazes of the crowd. Those with weak willpower were so frightened that their legs turned to jelly. The curly-bearded scholar looked as if he had lost a funeral, no longer having the carefree and unrestrained air of waving his fan. He gulped and bowed respectfully to Princess Rookin. I was momentarily blinded by greed. Now that I have realized my error, please take me in, princess. The rest followed suit. It was the second prince's flowery words that bewitched me. It was not my own will. Please investigate, princess. The second prince used despicable methods to lure and threaten me. I had no choice but to comply. A group of people pushed the blame to the second prince, making him so angry that his nose was crooked. Many of them had sought him out, such as the curly-bearded scholar. Princess Rookin could not make up her mind. She thought for a moment, then looked towards Suyu, subtly taking him as the leader. Looking at them, Suyu calmly said, Some of you were tempted. If you pay your debts, I'll let you go, or you'll be imprisoned for 100 years. There are also some who betrayed me because they were threatened. I can forgive them, and they can return to serve me. He did not kill them all at once. Instead, he dealt with them separately, fairly, and reasonably. The curly-bearded scholar was overjoyed. He was about to speak when Suyu's words sent him into a bottomless pit of ice. But there is also a group who betrayed me and brought new masters to provoke me. If you want to choose a good tree to nest in, or if you want to be a wise man, or if you do not want to be covered in dust, I will grant you your wishes. I will not take you in, nor will I make you pay compensation or send you to prison. We will meet at the relic of the Dayu. That's right. I'm talking about the 8 people who betrayed me last night. Get ready. The time to prove your worth has come. He spoke calmly, but his words were filled with cruelty and bloodthirst. Tomorrow, they would be hunted down by the purple demon-armored warriors. They would have nowhere to run. The curly-bearded scholar's legs turned to jelly. He begged, "Your Highness, please have mercy. I was blinded by greed. I don't want to die." Princess Rookin's expression turned cold. "Did you hear that? Do as Six Brother says." Walala, a group of purple demon-armored warriors threw them out like wolves and tigers. "If you give up on the relic of the Dayu, I will personally give the order to kill you." "Oh, don't even think about leaving the palace before the relic of the Dayu," Suyu added, cutting off their thoughts of escaping. Participating in the relic of the Dayu might allow them to escape death by a fluke. If they did not participate, they would not be able to leave the palace. Even if they did, so what? All lands under the heavens belonged to the emperor. It was too easy for a prince to kill anyone. The 8 of them were like abandoned stray dogs, remorseful and dejected as they followed the dejected second prince. Chapter 1821. Please enter the main text. Ha ha ha. This is too satisfying. Princess Ru Chan exclaimed with pride and elation. Emperor Wuhan could not stop giggling, and he looked at Suyu with a strange look in his eyes. The next morning, a melodious bell rang from deep within the palace. Princess Rookin's expression tightened as she looked into the depths of the palace. They're finally here. In the courtyard, Suyu and Emperor Wuhan sat with their eyes closed. The 130 purple demon-armored warriors were ready to go. They did not sleep the entire night. To be precise, no one in the palace could sleep, because from this day onwards, the fate of the empire would be decided for millions of years to come. The fight for the throne. Clang, clang. When the bell tolled, the 5 princes' mansions and the princesses' mansions all went into a huge commotion. Countless powerful young geniuses streamed out. They were like rivers flowing into the sea, gathering in the depths of the palace from different directions. That was the forbidden area of the palace. Usually, only one person in the entire empire could enter. The monarch, Dongfang Xia. Apart from him, not even the crown prince, Dongfang Wudi, could enter without permission. Anyone who disobeyed would be killed. In history, there had been 3 princes who had trespassed and were mercilessly killed. One of them was even more powerful than the current first prince, and the entire empire supported him. However, he was arrogant and had barged into the forbidden area alone. He had been killed by the monarch, shocking the other princes. Since then, no other prince had dared to trespass. They would not even go near the forbidden area unless it was absolutely necessary. But today, the moment that would decide their fate had arrived. 6 princes and 1 princess stood in front of the forbidden area with their heads held high. Behind them were the strong youths who had chosen to follow them. Among them, the first prince and the 5th prince had joined forces. They were the most powerful, with more than 200 people. The 6th prince and the princess had joined forces with more than 130 people. They were the second most powerful. Behind them were the 2nd prince's 90 people, the 3rd prince's 70 people, the 4th prince's 60 people. The area in front of the forbidden area was packed with people. They sized each other up. Apart from the 2nd prince, the other princes were shocked when they saw the 6th prince and Princess Rookin's troops. The 3rd prince was shocked. Where did their reinforcements come from? Outside of the 10 feudal lands, who else could provide support with more than 130 people? Was it the 6th prince? No, he was just a newcomer. How could he have the time to gather so many people? Or is it my sister? The 4th prince was also surprised. The 1st prince and the 5th prince looked over, and their faces darkened. Purple demon armor. The eldest imperial prince's eyes shone with a sinister light. He recognized the origin of the armor. Apart from the Emperor of Qi, no one else could fully equip a group of peak overlords. The 5th prince clenched his fists furiously. What benefits did the sixth prince give that old man to make him go against us with all his might? The two of them stared at each other. They had originally thought that the second prince was the biggest threat. Who knew that the true threat was the sixth prince and Princess Ru-chan, whom they had never taken seriously. While they were sizing up Su Yu's people, Su Yu was also sizing them up. He looked around and immediately noticed a pair of complicated eyes looking at him. When Su Yu looked over, he was slightly startled. Then, he smiled faintly and looked elsewhere. It's him. How could it be? Empress Ziwei, who was dressed in a purple robe, stared in disbelief at the familiar yet unfamiliar figure in the yellow robe. She was trembling, unable to suppress her shock. Ziwei, who did you see? Why are you so excited? A mocking voice came from beside her. It was a beautiful pink-robed woman with a peak overlord cultivation level. She had a voluptuous figure, and her snow-white chest was particularly eye-catching. She exuded an indescribable charm from head to toe. Ziwei regained some of her composure and pointed at Su Yu. Who is he? The charming woman looked over, her eyes flashing with ridicule. I was wondering why you've taken a liking to the sixth prince. Hee, Ziwei, although you are so beautiful that even I am jealous, you should forget about him. The beautiful women who want to marry him in the imperial city can line up from the imperial city to the feudal lands. I can only feast my eyes on them. Sixth prince. Empress Ziwei was shocked. Aren't there only 5 princes in the empire? The charming woman chuckled. Oh, I almost forgot. You have been training in isolation all this time and do not know what is going on in the outside world. Recently, a prince who has been wandering outside has appeared. He travels outside all year round, right? He has traveled in the constellation Sea. I remember you are from the constellation Sea, right? Do you know each other? No, I don't know him. Empress Ziwei's heart was in turmoil. It can't be wrong, it's him. It must be him. Su Yu. That's a pity. The sixth prince is a genius. Do you know what he comprehended with the power of the Dao Rain? You'll be shocked to death if I tell you. Empress Ziwei stared at Su Yu, her eyes darkening. How much of the rules did he comprehend? Back then, Su Yu was even inferior to her. After a few years, he had not only become the sixth prince of the Dayu Empire, his status had skyrocketed, and she had to look up to him. Even his abilities had changed drastically. She did not even qualify to participate in the Dao Rain, but Su Yu could participate as a prince, and he was the envy of everyone in the world. He must have condensed at least 50% of the rules, right? In contrast, she was still a long way from condensing the rules. How much? Complete rules and a law that has been comprehended 40%. He's definitely going to be the future emperor. Empress Ziwei gasped, her pupils constricting to the size of needles. Her chest felt like it had been smashed by a giant hammer, and she was extremely depressed. She could not believe that Su Yu had reached a level where she had to look up to him. However, this is nothing. The fifth prince and Princess Rukin have also comprehended the complete rules, so it's nothing in comparison. What's truly frightening is, do you know what kind of rules he has comprehended? Empress Ziwei was startled. Is it some kind of powerful rules? Powerful? Do you know what the 8 great rules of the heavenly path are? Empress Ziwei replied, Of course I do. It's one of the 8 most powerful laws of heaven and earth. It's extremely profound and abstruse, and only a handful of people have managed to comprehend it throughout history. However, every single person who has managed to do so has become the ruler of a great civilization. She wrinkled her nose. Don't tell me that he has comprehended one of the 8 great rules. She did not believe it from the bottom of her heart. Of course not. Empress Ziwei snorted and looked at Su Yu with a complicated expression. She said calmly, then it's not that great. He has comprehended 2 of the 8 great rules. Empress Ziwei's expression stiffened, and she stood rooted to the ground, forgetting to breathe. The charming woman's reverent voice continued to ring in her ears. He has comprehended the space rules completely, and he has comprehended 40% of the life rules. My goodness, it's hard to imagine that I can see a living demonic genius. Compared to him, what are we so-called geniuses? He is a dragon, and we are worms. No, it can't be like this. Back when she joined Bei Wangchun, she had told herself time and time again that from now on, she would walk a different path from Su Yu and Shui Guanyin. There would be no more interaction between them. After all, one faced the sky and the other faced the earth. But now, Su Yu was standing in front of her with the right to look down on her. How shocking was that? She had overturned her beautiful vision for several years. No, there's another person, Bei Wangchun. He can't be more powerful than Bei Wangchun. Empress Ziwei clenched her fists tightly. Back then, she had stubbornly betrayed her hometown, the civilization of the Sea of Constellations, and severed her ties with Su Yu and Shui Guanyin. Wasn't it because she was obsessed with Bei Wangchun's unparalleled potential that she realized she was a frog at the bottom of a well? She might not be able to compare with Su Yu, but the person she followed was definitely not wrong. The charming woman's pupils shrank. Bei Wangchun was a taboo existence in the Dayu Empire. He was also the only existence that could compare with Dongfang Wudi. He was not an emperor, but he was above all other emperors. His talents were terrifyingly strong. He might not be as good as Bei Wangchun, but the gray-robed emperor thinks very highly of the sixth prince. He has only shown such an attitude towards the sixth prince, the charming woman said with uncertainty. Empress Ziwei snorted coldly. That's because of his identity as a prince. If Bei Wangchun was also a yellow, the gray-robed emperor would definitely look up to him. What she did not know was that the gray-robed emperor understood the significance of comprehending the 8 great laws better than she did. Even if Bei Wangchun was the heir to the throne, the gray-robed emperor would not think so highly of him, let alone the fact that Bei Wangchun was not a prince. Those who comprehended the 8 great laws and those who comprehended the ordinary laws were destined to be people of 2 different worlds. Sensing that Empress Ziwei's gaze was fixed on him, Su Yu smiled lightly. Those who abandon me can't keep yesterday. Those who disturb my mind can only worry today. Since he had left, he would no longer worry. His gaze continued to look around, and suddenly, he found a familiar figure. Bei Wangchun's Ao Xiang. At this moment, he was staring at Su Yu with hatred, as if he wanted to skin Su Yu alive. Loser! Su Yu glanced at him casually, then looked at the other 8 people beside Ao Xiang. They were exactly the same as Ao Xiang, representing the other 8 sides of Bei Wangchun. Every Xiang has the fighting power of a half-step emperor. With the 9 Xiang working together, I'm afraid no one in the ruins of the Dayu Empire can defeat them. As if sensing his gaze, the 9 Xiang looked over at the same time. Their different gazes converged, giving Su Yu a sense of danger. The thread of fate suddenly shook. Oh! Su Yu narrowed his eyes. The last time the thread of fate shook like this was when he was fighting with Huan Yulangjun. Bei Wangchun was indeed a strong opponent that he needed to be wary of. Withdrawing his gaze, Su Yu looked elsewhere and met a pair of complicated crystal eyes. It was the north-gazing pearl. Su Yu smiled at her, which made the north-gazing pearl glare at him fiercely, as if to say, "How dare you smile?" Shrugging, Su Yu's gaze drifted to the rest of the people. At this moment, he found a slightly familiar person standing beside the north-gazing pearl. It was a young man who somewhat resembled Bei Wangchun. He smiled lightly at Su Yu to show his goodwill. Only then did Su Yu remember who he was. The north-gazing pavilion. That day in the swamp, when the other party was being hunted, it was Su Yu who saved his life. The other party even gave Su Yu a jade pendant and told him to look for him at the north-gazing manor if he was in trouble. Su Yu didn't expect him to come too. So many acquaintances. Su Yu touched his nose. Since they were all here, the Saint Lady of the Joyous Holy Ground should be here too, right? Sure enough, a gaze filled with hatred pierced through him. Su Yu smiled at her and shrugged his shoulders innocently, which made the other party grind her teeth and look at him as if she wanted to eat him alive. However, the next moment, Su Yu was attracted by the person beside her. It was an ordinary young man wearing a bamboo hat that covered his face. Su Yu's gaze involuntarily paused.